The scene opens at the end of a fierce battle, where Aang, the protagonist, is grappling with regret over his title as humanity's mightiest warrior. As he faces death, he feels unworthy of the title, despite having defeated all 7 of the Fin demons. However, there remains the 8th Fin demon, which is mentioned in the ancient king's stele. Aang believes that humans often fail to understand the true power of these demons, and he blames himself for not fulfilling the responsibilities of being the mightiest warrior. He wonders what the 8th Fin demon wants from him. As the demon approaches, Aang fears it may seek to mutilate his corpse in retaliation for the deaths of its underlings. As Aang's eyes close, he feels death enveloping him like darkness. After a while, he sees a glimmer of light and opens his eyes to find himself as a young boy, surrounded by many people in an unfamiliar room. He wonders where he is. Looking at his hands, he realizes this does not feel like a dream and is confused about what is happening. He touches his face and is shocked to find that it is not his own. His once ruggedly handsome and charismatic features are gone, and his sturdy physique has vanished. He is deeply concerned about his current whereabouts and identity. It was the Helos urban area, where the 3rd captain, Yaot, was addressing the gathered people. He wanted them to understand clearly what it meant to undertake the warrior examination, and that a warrior embodies protection and hope. He recounted a story from the year 3069, when their planet faced its doomsday. During that time, 6 colossal structures, known as the ancient king's steles, descended from the skies. Creatures, now known as demons, arrived and began massacring humans. After enduring brutal battles against their own extinction, humanity developed a way to fight back using grafting equipment. By recycling the cores found within the demons and equipping themselves with this technology, humans were temporarily granted powers on par with the demons. About 60 years ago, Aang, humanity's mightiest warrior, who was revered as a king by the warriors, led the world's forces against the greatest demonic horde ever recorded. The great battle raged for weeks, painting the world in a crimson hue. Ultimately, the warriors succeeded in defeating the demonic horde, delivering a crushing blow to the demons, and thus granting humanity 60 years of uninterrupted development and growth. Aang was shocked to hear about the events from 60 years ago, and realized he had somehow been transported into the future. Yaot continued, explaining that the victory came at the cost of countless warriors who sacrificed their lives for the greater good, including Aang himself. Reports indicated that Aang had died in battle while fighting against several of the strongest of the 7 Fin demons. That battle marked a turning point for humanity. It cast aside its fear and rose from the darkness, determined to bring about a new dawn. This battle was known as the Battle of Dawn. Aang thought this account was incorrect. He knew that the strongest demon was the 8th Fin demon, and although he was losing consciousness at the time, he had definitely seen it. Even now, humanity remained unaware of the true power of the demons. Yacht continued, emphasizing that without those fallen warriors, no one would be there to uphold the ideals of protection and hope. He asked if they all now understood what it meant to be a warrior. They all agreed. Aang murmured to himself that something was not right. Yacht heard Aang's murmur and approached him, noting that it seemed Aang did not fully understand what it meant to be a warrior. He then asked for Aang's name. Aang hesitated, wondering whether he should reveal that he was Aang, the mightiest warrior of whom they were speaking. He questioned whether they would even believe him, given that he had been transported from 60 years ago into a frail new body. Yaot learned Aang's name and expressed his disapproval, stating that it was disrespectful for such a great name to be borne by someone who could not grasp the fundamental qualities of a warrior. He accused Aang of disrespecting the legacy of the mightiest warrior. In his anger, Yaot punched Aang. Aang was shocked and realized that his current body was so weak it couldn't even respond to such an attack. He never imagined he would bear the same name again. Yaot informed Aang that he would be keeping a close eye on him during the upcoming warrior examination. He then instructed everyone to proceed to the examination grounds for their physical assessment. Lance asked Aang if he was okay and introduced himself, expressing his pleasure at meeting Aang. Lu, visibly angered, reproached Lance for calling Aang by the great name of Aang when he was clearly a weakling. She then asked Aang if he still believed he would possess the same powers just because he shared the name of the mightiest warrior. Aang was taken aback by Lu's arrogance and questioned how she dared to speak so disrespectfully about his name. Lance explained that Lu was a prominent figure among their batch of warrior candidates, known as the Solemn Rakshasi. She was the daughter of the renowned Seto noble family from the Helos urban area. Aang recognized the Seto name as familiar. Lance helped Aang to his feet and inadvertently clicked a picture of the moment, joking that it was a mesmerizing bromance. As Tenny and Lu paused upon noticing the photo, Lu told them to continue. Aang then asked Lu who she was. Lance inquired if Lu took the photo. Aang told her to focus on more important matters. Misa, who had been observing, admitted to taking the picture and introduced herself. She explained that she was captivated by the moment and found it excellent source material for her work. The scene shifts to the physical assessment field. Aang thought to himself that despite his current body's condition, he was still the mightiest warrior. He found it laughable to hear what it meant to be a warrior in front of him, and was confident that his results would surprise everyone. The referee announced that the first physical assessment would be a long-distance endurance test. As the warriors took their positions and the race began, Aang was determined to finish first and set a new record. However, he ended up with the worst time, coming in last. Exhausted, he realized that his body was in worse shape than he had anticipated, and others laughed at his performance. The second test was the explosive arm strength test, in which Aang also finished last and even sprained his wrist. The third test was the explosive leg strength test, requiring participants to jump. Aang's jump was only half the distance of Liu's, who referred to him as an idiot. The referee announced that Aang was in last place in all the physical assessments, achieving the worst results in history. He warned that Aang might be eliminated from the examination. Aang was deeply disappointed by his performance. Misa continued to snap pictures, thinking it might be the last time she captures moments of Aang and Lance together. The referee informed Yacht that, given Aang's results, he was considering eliminating him from the second test. However, Yacht responded that while Aang might seem like a hopeless case, he still deserved the chance to participate in the second round, which would likely be his last assessment. He instructed the start of the second round. The warriors were informed that the second round would soon begin and would determine their synchronization with the grafting equipment. They were directed to proceed to the next assessment site. Aang saw this as his opportunity to prove himself. He remembered that in the past, he had maintained an average synchronization rate above 96%. Despite his current body's lackluster state, synchronization depended on willpower, and he was determined to show those who had laughed at him. As he observed the grafting equipment, which seemed to have advanced 60 years into the future and was remarkably light, he felt a sense of determination. Liu achieved a synchronization rate of 39%, the highest among the candidates, which was expected given her training in the martial family. Someone was eager to make her his girlfriend, and she was indeed dazzling. As she descended, Tenny and others praised her extensively. With an air of confidence, she headed to the lounge. Once there, she was thrilled to learn that she had achieved a 39% synchronization rate. Although she enjoyed the admiration, she decided to keep a low profile and calm down. Aang was impressed by Liu's 39% rate on the first test. Lance remarked on Liu's strength and spirit, noting that there was a fire burning beneath her slender physique. Aang sensed the same fiery presence in her. Lance mentioned that Aang didn't seem nervous. Aang replied that he was accustomed to such situations. The assessment continued. Many newcomers, experiencing the grafting equipment for the first time, displayed pained expressions. Due to the impact from the demon core, their bodies were subjected to extreme strain during their initial grafting. Some participants could not endure the pain and gave up. The warriors who achieved the lowest synchronization rate, with a minimum of 10%, would pass the test. Lance achieved a 24% synchronization rate. Naturally, there were some unexpected results. Misa scored 30% and also passed the test. Yayot commented that the assessment had revealed some promising rookies. A girl noted that, including Misa, there were a total of 6 warriors who had shown exceptional potential in their batch. Yacht acknowledged that while there were some promising candidates, there were still others who sorely lacked the necessary qualities. Finally, it was Aang's turn. Others were mocking him, speculating about what his synchronization rate would be, given his poor performance in the first round of assessments. Aang thought to himself that they would regret their laughter. He was determined to prove them wrong, and hoped they wouldn't be able to handle the shock of what they were about to see. Aang chose the Crimson Core for its enhancement of physical strength, and recalled that there were a total of 6 types of demon cores that could be acquired from the battlefield. The most commonly seen ones were Crimson, Yellow, Green, and Blue. He believed that achieving such a high synchronization rate required immense willpower. The strength of one's willpower determined how much power they could draw from the demon core and further, how much control they could exert over it. He was asked if he was ready. He agreed, and once the process began, a strong reaction was felt in the lounge, leaving Liu surprised to find it coming from Aang. Aang thought to himself that he would demonstrate the synchronization rate of the mightiest warrior. Lance remarked that Aang was exceptionally strong and had been concealing his power. The staff was astonished when the synchronization rate surged to 40%. Aang was confident that he would easily reach 96%, and his intensity increased. The warriors were astounded as the rate continued to rise, reaching 60%. Yaot was shocked to see the synchronization rate and questioned how such an exaggerated rate was possible, wondering if there was a malfunction. The girl reported that the rate was still rising, reaching 80%. The warriors began to suspect whether Aang was cheating or if there was a problem with the equipment. Aang thought about being referred to as the king by the warriors and resolved to show them what the mightiest warrior could achieve. He wanted them to see the difference in power between them and himself. However, he felt an unusual shift, and his strength began to dissipate, leaving him exhausted. He declared that he would not continue further. One of the men asked if he was playing around, and it turned out that there had been a malfunction. The final result showed a synchronization rate of only 10%. The girl explained to Yaot that the demon core had shattered and was likely an anomalous core, which had caused the abnormal data. Yaot wondered if this was indeed a malfunction. Ultimately, it was confirmed that Aang passed the test with a synchronization rate of 10%. Others commented that it was an anomalous demon core, and that there was no way such a frail body could achieve such a terrifying synchronization rate. Tenny laughed at Aang's expense. Lance approached to check if Aang was all right. Lu, feeling a mix of fear and jealousy, thought there was someone more eye-catching than herself, which she wouldn't tolerate. Lance helped Aang leave the area. Aang reflected on how mature he had become, realizing that his competitiveness with the others had been a good thing, and he was relieved to have passed the test. Misa happily took pictures of Lance with Aang. As Aang sat in the lounge, he wondered about the earlier event, feeling as though something from deep within had drained his strength in a single breath, a phenomenon he had never experienced before. Despite his willpower raising the synchronization rate to 80%, even a low-quality core shouldn't have shattered like that. Yaot arrived to congratulate them on making it to the final round of the examination, the real combat exercise. For Tenny, it would be their first time fighting against demons. He hoped that they would all pass the next phase safely. A man then instructed them to proceed to the third examination ground. Aang, feeling unwell, walked with a sense of foreboding, muttering that he felt he might die. As he left, Yaot noticed Aang's broken crimson core and became intrigued by his power. Yaot was curious to see how Aang would perform in the upcoming fog hunt round. They gathered in front of the gate, which was about to open. Aang thought about how it would be his first time stepping outside and reflected on how humans had lived in isolated settlements for years, with the area beyond the wall perpetually shrouded in thick fog. They were instructed to stop wasting time, proceed quietly, and check their equipment thoroughly before talking, or else they risked death. Aang pondered the new core he had received. He didn't believe the core itself was the issue, but his strength had vanished suddenly, as if something within him had rejected the core. He wondered if this was a side effect of time travel. As he moved forward, he sensed the presence of demons. Shockwaves emanated from him, reaching a nearby cave where a demon was seated. The demon, feeling a presence stronger than itself, was taken aback. Aang wondered if these were the demons he had sensed, as something within him began to resonate for an unknown reason. Just as he was contemplating this, Lu urged him to move ahead. He apologized for the delay, and Lance approached to ask if there was a problem. Aang started to say something, but before he could finish, a man instructed him, Misa, and 3 others to form a team. Since everyone else was ready, there was no need to wait. They should catch up with the group ahead. Misa wondered if forming a team with them was part of Aang's plan. He replied that he hadn't considered it. Lu urged them not to linger and to move ahead. She had felt anxious earlier, worried that no one would team up with her. Lance then asked Aang to join him, and Misa took a photo of the group, announcing that their team was now formed. The dispelling stele was a black-colored structure made from durable minerals. One of its minerals had a special property that dispels fog within a certain distance. The examiner explained that they would be undertaking the exam as a team of 4. He assumed they were all aware of the exam's nature, which was the fog hunt. Each team member would receive a combat knife and a mini fog-dispelling device, made from the same material as the stele. Their mission was straightforward. The fog hunt was the final obstacle every new recruit must face in the fog-covered world. A warrior must be mindful of the dangers that lurk in the fog. Becoming a warrior involves more than just having a capable physique. It requires facing one's fears and confronting the unknown as a team. They must awaken the hunter within them, defeat the demons that appear, and only then will they truly earn the title of a warrior. The examination for the first team concluded, and the second team was instructed to prepare. Yoshi, Joel, and Yaot observed the scene from the gate. Yoshi noted that there were several promising new talents in the group, but her focus was clearly on Lu. She inquired about Joel's and Yaot's opinions. Joel responded that Lu, coming from a martial family with a proper upbringing, had the potential to become a fine warrior. Yaot added that there were multiple individuals to watch, specifically mentioning Aang. Yaot had investigated Aang's core personally, but had found no faults. He remained curious about what had really happened during the earlier event. Yoshi patted Yaot on the head, calling him Tang Tang, and asked what he was thinking. Yaot asked her not to use that nickname. Joel commented that only Yoshi could make Tang Tang blush. Yoshi then inquired if they had assessed the demon levels, emphasizing that only non-finned demons should appear within the exam ground. Yaot reassured her not to worry. They had been monitoring the area for several days to ensure the exam would proceed safely, confirming that no finned demons were within a safe distance of Helos town. Joel added that even if a finned demon did appear, they would intervene to protect the future warriors. The next group's exam was completed, and it was now time for the 10th group. Liu, who was in this group along with Aang, prepared to start. As Aang picked up the small container, Liu took it from him and rushed ahead, eager to demonstrate her skills. Aang wondered why someone would be so intent on showing off. Tinny quickly followed Liu, jumping to place the container in its designated spot. Yoshi commented that Liu's recovery core was impressive, noting that her dexterity was on par with the blue agility cores, which reflected her martial family background. Soon, demons began to attack. Aang instructed the group to engage the demons, and Lance leaped into action, delivering a powerful punch. Yaot remarked that Lance's performance was commendable, and that he had already harnessed his core's strength effectively. Aang drew his knife, advising each person to target a single demon. Teeny complied and charged into battle. Misa slashed at one demon multiple times, eventually killing it. Lance also eliminated a demon with a single punch. Joel noted that the coordination between Misa and Lance was excellent, with Misa showcasing impressive moves and maximizing the agility cores. Yacht reminded them not to focus too much on any one person. Liu then drove her knife into a demon, causing it to burst apart. Now it was Aang's turn to showcase his skills. He focused on the 3 critical points: the throat, chest, and abdomen. With precise strikes, he targeted these areas, reflecting on the limitations of his current body and the amount of burst damage he could deliver. Determined to push his limits, he prepared to test his capabilities under these exam conditions and rushed forward to continue attacking the demon. The demon punched him, but he dodged and stabbed the knife under its shoulder, thinking that his reaction time was too slow. As the demon attempted to kick him, he dodged again and stabbed the knife once more, noting that his motor coordination was lacking. He even landed a few hits but found that his attacks were too weak. Lance remarked that it seemed like Aang was toying with the demon. Misa was taking pictures and wondered if she would capture everything. Liu remained unresponsive but thought that Aang was intentionally showing off. Finally, Yoshi noticed and asked who he was, observing that he was pressing his attacks effectively. Joel added that Aang also seemed to move like a seasoned veteran. Aang concluded that his body couldn't use any of the abilities from his past, and he was tiring quickly, a dire situation. He decided it was time to finish off the demon. However, as he rushed to attack, something emerged from the group to kill the demon. Misa wondered what those roots were. As they fought the demon, a one-fin demon emerged. Recognizing the threat, Yaot instructed the warriors to fall back, and they quickly complied. Yoshi and Joel also engaged the one-fin demon. Yoshi urged the hunters not to panic and to retreat to Yaot, who promised to protect them until they reached town. The one-fin demon remarked that a human felt like a demon. Aang and his 3 friends were already trapped and wondered what the demon was saying. Liu thought the no-fin demon was no match for the one-fin demon and feared she would be torn to shreds in an instant. Aang realized that his current body wasn't equipped to handle a one-fin demon and felt overwhelmed by the fear of facing such a formidable opponent as an ordinary warrior. The one-fin demon incapacitated the 4 of them and began to carry them away. Joel and Yoshi rushed to confront the demon, but as it fled underground with the 4, Joel instructed the group to follow. After some time, the trail ended abruptly. Yoshi wondered how a one-fin demon could have appeared suddenly, given that Yaot had repeatedly checked the area for days without making any mistakes. This kind of incident had never occurred before. Yaot arrived, questioning where the 4 warriors had gone and why they had stopped tracking the demon. Joel told him to calm down, as the trail had ended. Yoshi explained that the one-fin demon seemed to have descended deeper, and that they shouldn't rush, since the area ahead was unexplored. Yaot, recalling his past and the loss of his brother, pounded the ground in frustration, blaming himself for the danger faced by the 4 warriors. Joel suggested returning to town, betting that it had descended into chaos in their absence. He proposed sending search teams to investigate the surrounding area and ensure no more one-fin demons were present. Yoshi agreed that no one expected such an outcome, but emphasized the need to stay calm, even though she knew it was difficult for Yaot. Yaot stood up, telling both Yoshi and Joel to return to town, while he continued searching for the four warriors, assuring them not to worry. Joel began to speak, but Yoshi interrupted, instructing Yaot to return before sunset. Yaot agreed and ventured into the fog. Yoshi remarked that they wouldn't be able to change Yaot's mind. Joel agreed, adding that Yaot's younger brother had been taken by a demon, and Yaot still blamed himself for that loss. Yoshi noted that if Yaot's brother were alive, he would be around the same age as the captured kids, and they likely reminded Yaot of him. The scene shifts to the cave where Aang and the others were tied up. Aang woke up, confused about their location, and was relieved to find that everyone was still alive. The demon appeared from behind, commenting that Aang was the first to wake and seemed different from the other three. The demon was curious about Aang's identity and why he had a similar aura to that of the demon, even appearing stronger than the one-fin demon. Aang asked what the demon was talking about. In response, Aang emitted a red light, breaking free from his restraints, and charged at the demon. The demon dodged Aang's attack. Aang thought to himself that, in the past, he could have sliced the demon's head off before it even had a chance to react. He needed to rescue the others. He noted that the one-fin demon had a red core, which gave it agile movement and flexible limbs, enhancing its reaction and attack speed. However, this also meant that its joints weren't protected by thick skin, making its agility both a strength and a weakness. Just then, the demon extended spikes from its hand and stabbed them into Aang. Aang realized that targeting the demon's joints was the only way to exploit its weakness. He pressed hard to force the demon's hand out, determined not to be underestimated. He declared to the demon that he had killed countless one-fin demons before. The demon responded by delivering a brutal kick, injuring Aang and causing him to bleed. The demon taunted Aang, stating that even though he knew its weakness, as a wood-type demon, it could regenerate its body. Aang was shocked, as he believed only green core demons had regenerative abilities. He wondered if demons had evolved over the past half-century. The demon accused Aang of underestimating it, and then used roots to stab through Aang, drawing him closer. Grabbing Aang by the head, the demon said that he still didn't understand Aang. Aang felt the roots piercing through his organs, causing intense pain and making it hard to breathe. He had only just been reincarnated, yet it seemed he was already on the brink of death. He feared for the lives of the other three as well. Just as in his past life, Aang felt that everyone would die alongside him, and he was filled with regret and sorrow. He lamented his weakness and felt profound remorse for his companions. The one-fin demon, sensing Aang's weakness, decided to consume him in order to evolve. However, as the demon prepared to eat Aang, another demon within Aang questioned if the one-fin demon planned to consume him. It pondered whether, if Aang died, the demon's plan would be thwarted and expressed frustration at having to use its remaining consciousness in such a dire situation. The one-fin demon sensed an overwhelming, terrifying aura. As the demon form within Aang began to emerge, the one-fin demon wondered if it was a five-fin or six-fin demon. The release of energy from Aang's demon was immense, causing tremendous pressure and sending waves of power into the sky. The one-fin demon was struck with fear as the eight-fin demon revealed itself. The eight-fin demon declared itself the strongest red core demon and the king of the one-fin demon. Terrified, the one-fin demon addressed the eight-fin demon as Crimson. Meanwhile, Yaot continued his search, dispatching all the demons that crossed his path. After a while, he paused and reported that he had searched the surrounding area, but had only encountered 2 no-finned demons. He felt that the 4 candidates were not there and resolved to continue searching until he found them before sunset. He also noticed a massive energy flux in the distance and wondered what it could be, speculating if the candidates might be involved. Aang, on the other hand, expressed his surprise at emerging in such a dark and sunless place. He demanded that the final demon answer truthfully whether he had disappeared and if the other 5 were still reigning as King Finns. The final demon confirmed that nothing had changed since then. Aang remarked that it seemed the demons were existing relatively peacefully. Anger surged within him as he recalled the events from 60 years ago and questioned whether they had forgotten what they had done to him. He then attacked the final demon, expressing his frustration. He lamented that, despite choosing the body of the mightiest warrior as his vessel, it had proven to be so weak after time traveling, leaving him deeply disappointed. Aang was frustrated that he was wasting the last of his consciousness on such a trivial situation. If he wished to reveal himself again, he would need to wait until he was fully awakened. He had to wait for the mightiest warrior to gradually regain his full memories. The final demon explained that the fin memory Aang referred to was associated with their evolution. Aang noted that the protrusions on their knees and the number of fins they had indicated their level. When they grew new fins, they required fin memory, a trait unique to their kind. This was why they were always stronger than other races. and the warrior Aang currently embodied was the same as them. However, they could only evolve after devouring a demon of the same level. Aang needed to consume demons of a higher level to awaken the fin memory and evolve. The final demon said this would be a gift from the eight-finned demon. He pledged to support the eight-finned demon and serve him with all his abilities. The eight-finned demon replied that he was unworthy, and his only value was to enable Aang to awaken his fin memories. He had already prepared the first stage for Aang and didn't want to disappoint him in future leveling. The eight-finned demon needed Aang to slowly awaken to the eight fins, and when the time came, the eight-finned demon would awaken from his deep slumber. He then merged back into Aang. Aang was reminded of the past, where he and a boy were gravely injured. A man had told Aang that he wouldn't die because a girl was waiting for him. Aang had questioned why the man wasn't dying, and noted that his face was changing. He opened his eyes in the present and wondered if he was dreaming. Realizing these were old memories, he was taken aback. The curtains opened, revealing Liu, Misa, and Lance, who were delighted to see Aang awake. Aang was shocked to see them. Misa noticed a change in Aang's hair and jokingly asked if the demon had taken him to a barber. Aang, confused, asked what she was talking about, and then inquired about their well-being, recalling that they had been taken underground by the final demon. Yacht entered, noting that Aang seemed to know everything, and asked him to explain what had happened underground. The other two captains were present as well, and Aang asked why they were there. Yoshi explained that Yacht had brought them back. Referring to him as Tang Tang, Yoshi noticed the others' confusion. Joel added that Yacht had found the four of them lying unconscious in a cave. It was fortunate that the one-finned demon was found there. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to bring them all back. Yoshi mentioned that the three others, besides Aang, had awakened after a while, but had no recollection of what happened inside the cave. Only Aang remained unconscious and had undergone some changes. She handed him a mirror to show him his altered hair and asked him to try to recall something from the underground cave. Aang was shocked by his appearance and wondered what had happened to him. Everything that had occurred after his time travel was beyond his understanding. He remembered losing consciousness after being hit in the cave but couldn't recall anything beyond that. He debated whether to tell them about his time travel, but decided against it, realizing it would be troublesome. They might not believe him and could think he had lost his mind. Instead, he resolved to continue operating under his current identity and focus on understanding what was happening. Aang mentioned that he briefly regained consciousness and realized they were in an underground cave. He fainted again shortly afterward and didn't know what happened next. Yacht wondered if he might be overthinking things. However, upon arriving at the scene, he noticed blood on the walls. Joel approached Aang and pointed out that the name associated with him was the same as that of the mightiest warrior. He noted that while Aang's fighting skills were impressive, he was still lacking in certain areas. Joel asked if Aang had fought demons before. Aang denied, explaining that while he was interested in combat and had done extensive research on demons, he had no direct experience fighting them. Yoshi remarked that Aang seemed well-studied and advised Yao not to give up on training such a promising warrior. Aang then inquired about the status of his warrior examination. Misa informed him that they had passed and were now part of the Stilk team. Lance added that due to recent incidents, Yacht had organized them into a group of 4. Liu noted that they were falling behind compared to others. Yacht explained that teams had to accept missions to gain points, and since Aang had been unconscious for 3 days, they hadn't accumulated any points. Aang was shocked to learn he had been unconscious for so long. The next day, the 4 of them prepared and dressed in their proper uniforms, stood in the town. Citizens discussed the new warriors who had gathered 3 days ago. Yote congratulated them on becoming official warriors and commended them for surviving an encounter with a one-finned demon. He would be leading their squad, which was one of 9 under his command. Yacht expressed his hope that they would stand out among the other squads. Aang thought the rules seemed tougher than before. Lance asked Aang if he had really never heard of the squad leader board. It appeared that Aang was a newcomer without much knowledge about it, and currently they were at the bottom of the leaderboard. Yacht explained the details of the leaderboard and informed them that the bottom squads would face monthly punishments, such as becoming the cleaning squad, until the next month's rankings were decided. Aang understood why the town was so clean. Yacht appointed Liu as the leader of their group and asked if there were any objections. Lance and Misa had no objections. Aang wondered if they would later regret not making him the leader. Liu was excited about his new role. Yacht instructed them to take missions from the board and to become accustomed to using their nano-wings in battle. He told them to come to him if they encountered any problems. As Yacht left, Liu suggested they check the available missions, noting that they needed to catch up with the others. Misa, however, pointed out something more important. They needed to take a group picture. They quickly took the photo. Yacht later asked Joel and Yoshi for their thoughts on the situation. Yoshi mentioned that, as Yacht had noted, there were no fin demons around the cave. All had succumbed to explosive deaths, leaving blood splatters across the floor. Joel asked Yacht if he suspected that the 4 candidates were responsible for this. Yacht replied that he felt suspicious about Aang, noting that Aang had a familiar odor about him. Yoshi advised Yacht not to overthink it, and expressed her happiness that the 4 had returned safely. She requested that Yacht train them hard so they wouldn't lose to her squad. Yacht assured her he was being serious. Joel suggested that they keep observing and to inform them if Aang did anything noteworthy. The scene shifted to the mission board, where Aang was pleased to see that all the missions were of the Iran level, each offering 10 points upon completion. Lance pointed out that A-level missions were the highest level available, while Misa added that these might be the most challenging. Lance explained that B-level missions awarded 6 points, and CA-level missions awarded 3 points. While the latter two were relatively easier and safer, air-level missions were notorious for their danger, with frequent casualties. Liu took note of the 3 missions available, and along with Aang, decided they would undertake all of them. The 4 of them started running, and Aang activated the core. The nano wings deployed, but one of them got stuck on a rock. Aang focused on visualizing and harnessing the energy from the nano wings. Successfully, he materialized a sword in his hand, reflecting on how nanotech had advanced over the past 60 years. They then took cover behind a rock, and Liu confirmed they were all set. She informed them that their targets were 2 demons with no fins, and they needed to take both out simultaneously. She instructed them to stick to the plan and wait for her signal. When the signal came, they rushed to attack the demons. Liu noted they had 3 A-level missions to complete and lacked the time for an extended fight. They needed to end the confrontation quickly. Lance would obstruct their line of sight, so by attacking the demons, they could disappear from view. Liu reminded the team of the plan. She, Aang, and Misa would immobilize the demons. After executing the attack, Aang wondered how the demons would move with a severed joint. Lance punched both demons into the air, setting them up for Liu to finish the fight with her graceful moves. She executed the final blow with precision, feeling satisfied that the timing was perfect. Misa noted that the fog had cleared and the insertion was stable. Lance, relieved that the task was complete, commented on how dispersing the fog in the wild was significantly more challenging than in the exams, which was expected for A-level missions. Even one mission had taken a considerable amount of time. Misa discovered a red core from the demons and was pleased. Liu confirmed that they had finally achieved the full 10 points. Aang was surprised to learn that completing a mission automatically destroyed the cores. Misa explained that all the science was geared towards defeating the demons, and a chip inside the mission form was connected to the leaderboard in town. All completed missions would have their points automatically added to the leaderboard. After finishing the fog dispersal mission outside the town, Misa asked Aang if she could take a look at the other 2 cores. Upon inspection, she expressed disappointment. They had only acquired 3 cores after spending the entire afternoon fighting the no-fin demons, and they still needed to collect 7 more. Misa mentioned that capturing demons alive was particularly challenging. Lance commented that it seemed they had managed to keep things relatively easy for quite some time. Liu then outlined the next part of their plan. They would complete the remaining missions and continue pursuing A-level missions with the goal of reaching the top. Misa noted that Liu was glowing at that moment and took a picture of her. Lance emphasized that they should aim for the top rank and not let other squads look down on them. He then asked Aang for his thoughts. Aang replied that other squads would also be earning points, so they needed to act quickly to stay ahead. It was always the case that the fastest teams were the ones who succeeded, while those who lagged behind gained nothing. He reflected on how, despite being over 50 years old and having lived through 2 lifetimes, he felt rejuvenated by being with them. The youthful drive and determination of his teammates were invigorating and made him feel young again. He suggested that they try to complete another mission before sunset. Misa and Lance agreed. Liu felt as though Aang was stepping into her role. Lance had already taken down several demons and reported that they had eliminated 3 more. Liu noted that they were running low on tranquilizers for the no-fins, and there was a limit to how many each squad could carry. As Liu handled her gun, Aang stared at it intently. Liu explained that it was a nanotech tranquilizer gun, which would allow them to capture the demons. Aang recalled the past, when capturing demons required brute force and beating them unconscious, often leading to complaints from researchers about brain damage. Lance remarked that it was fortunate they had captured the demons, especially since they were out of tranquilizers. It seemed they had completed the mission, having slain an entire group of demons to capture the 3 alive, and there were more than 10 in total. Stretching out, Misa reminded them that all other warriors had to return before sunset, an ironclad rule with punishments for late returns. She suggested they head back. Aang wondered if he even had a home in that timeline. Liu mentioned that she needed to hurry and return as well. They just needed to set the GPS so the researchers could locate the spot, and the mission would be considered complete once they collected the 3 demons. Aang then asked if anyone else felt a sudden surge of killing intent. Red rays appeared from behind, striking the demons and killing them instantly. A masked boy confronted them, declaring that he wouldn't allow them to complete their mission. He insisted that his squad was supposed to handle all A-level missions, and questioned who gave Liu's squad permission to take them on. Aang wondered who these people were. The leader of the guild explained that they were the Black Gun Squad, the seniors of their group. He then asked a girl from his team how many squads had joined the mission. She replied that there were 3. The leader scolded Aang and his team for their rudeness in not greeting their seniors. The 4 members of the Black Gun Squad descended and confronted Liu's team, accusing them of taking A-level missions without permission and questioning if they were looking down on them. Liu was infuriated that these 4 had killed the demons her squad had worked so hard to capture. The boy from the Black Gun Squad asked about the leader of Liu's squad and why they hadn't come to greet the Black Gun Squad themselves. Liu rushed to kick him, but he dodged and questioned how she dared to attack her seniors. Liu retorted that they were not worthy of being called her seniors. Lance and Misa intervened, urging Liu to resolve the issue through conversation. Misa expressed frustration over the Black Gun Squad's unreasonable behavior and questioned how they could kill the demons her team had worked so hard to capture. The boy dismissed their concerns, saying it was all part of the competition and that they were being naive. Liu's anger grew with each passing moment. Lance and Misa tried to pull Liu away, and Lance asked Aang to handle the situation and settle things peacefully. However, Aang charged forward, kicking the boy and causing him to fall, which also knocked off his mask. Aang exclaimed that he had never heard something so shameless and questioned if they understood the effort it took to capture those demons. Lance and Misa were stunned by Aang's reaction, but Liu was pleased. The boy, now unmasked, challenged Aang, telling him to be ready for a fight. Liu, eager for battle, also prepared to engage. As the battle was about to start, Yacht intervened, blocking the attacks from both the boy and Aang, and pushed them both to the ground. Aang thought the fight was over and was curious to see how strong the current generation of warriors was. Yacht, visibly angry, reminded everyone that the sun was about to set and that they were still causing trouble. He warned them not to provoke the demons. The boy then claimed that they were attacked by others. Liu questioned why he was speaking to the captain. Misa revealed that she had photos of the Black Gun Squad killing the demons that Liu's squad had captured. Lance asked when Misa had taken these photos. Yacht clarified that they were the ones who had taken the A-rank mission. Liu reported that the mission had been successful until the Black Gun Squad interfered. Yacht acknowledged this, explaining that while the interference seemed unreasonable, similar situations had occurred with the Black Gun Squad when they were new. Yacht stated that he would not involve himself further. It was up to the squads to resolve their conflicts on their own. The only thing that mattered was the points at kata, and while direct harm or endangerment of others was not allowed, other methods to achieve mission goals were permitted. The rules were the same for everyone, and they would face even more despicable situations in the future, though not insignificant ones like this. Yacht had only stopped their duel because the sun was setting, so he instructed everyone to return to the town immediately. He told the Black Gun Squad that it was shameful for them to let a rookie squad handle A-level missions, and advised them to go back and reconsider their actions. As the boy was leaving, he asked Aang to dare reveal his name. Aang provided his name, and the boy, feeling a bit unsettled, turned to his friends and questioned if they had heard that Aang was the name of the mightiest warrior. The boy declared that he wouldn't allow Aang and his squad to take points easily and vowed to make them the last ones. Pointing to the injury on his face, he promised to make Aang pay for it. He put his mask back on and instructed his squad to leave. As they departed, Yacht remarked that while the Black Gun Squad might not be the strongest, they were known for their swift and decisive actions and would likely go out of their way to sabotage Liu's squad's missions. Their team leader also used a gun. Although the boy hadn't shown his gun, Yacht admitted that he was quite strong for a rookie. If everyone had fought seriously, the outcome might have been different. Yacht then told the 4 of them to head back to town. Liu, contemplating the situation, saw Aang standing there and asked why he had acted so recklessly. She also expressed her appreciation for his kick. Lance invited Aang to his home for dinner that evening, but Aang declined. Lance inquired if Aang had a secret plan, to which Aang agreed. He thought he would focus on capturing 3 demons alive that day. At night, an announcement warned people not to leave the tower for their own safety. Aang stood to the side, reflecting on how he had only heard the announcement and seen no one walking around. He guessed that with the entire town under lockdown, there wouldn't be much to do, and he planned to check out his home after completing his mission. He noted that the security at the main gate was lax, observing only a solitary guard. He wondered if they were understaffed, or if they simply didn't expect anyone to attempt leaving at night. Seeing the gap in the gate wide enough for him to slip through, he prepared to go. Just then, Liu approached and noted that she had anticipated his actions. She was clearly excited and mentioned that she knew he had planned to go out at night when he had previously hinted at it. Aang replied that her observation was making him nervous. Liu then asked why he was out at such a late hour and if he was going somewhere specific. Aang played it off, saying he had simply eaten too much and wanted to take a stroll. He then admitted that he intended to surprise everyone in the morning and use the time to make up for the sabotage caused by the masked boy earlier that afternoon. Since Liu had seen him, he realized that his plan was now at risk. As Aang entered the town, Liu caught up with him and asked about his plans. She remarked that she felt like a genius and was looking forward to seeing the masked guy's utterly confused face in the morning. Aang asked why she was snickering. Liu claimed she wasn't, but her amusement was evident. On top of the main gate, 2 guards sat, yawning widely. One of them complained that guarding at night felt like torture and wondered why they couldn't close the gate completely since no one was supposed to leave the town. The second guard, munching on something, warned him not to say such things, or the third captain would hear. He explained that the gap in the gate was there for emergencies, recalling an incident from a few years ago when refugees had arrived at the gate. They were slaughtered by demons because the gate took too long to open. Since then, all towns had maintained an emergency gap, prioritizing human lives over all else in that world. The first guard apologized, and the second guard reassured him, saying they would get used to it. He then pulled out an adult book, indicating that they had ways to pass the time. The first guard realized that the book featured the latest photo shoot of female warriors from other towns. The second guard mentioned that it had cost him a fortune and was hard to obtain, but it might make the night pass faster by flipping through the pages. As they were engrossed in the book, Aang and Liu rushed out of the gate. Aang observed that the exam ground they had used was now shrouded in denser fog than it had been in the morning. They moved to a different location, where Liu pointed out that they would be less noticeable due to the distance from the walls and the cover provided by the decaying forest. Aang reminded Liu of the plan. He would lure the demons out, and she should aim for their heads. They would use brute force to incapacitate them. He then headed into the fog, telling her to wait for him. Liu, although confident in Aang's abilities, felt a twinge of anxiety as he disappeared into the thick fog. She wondered if her emotions were a mix of excitement and fear, but knew she had to stay focused and be ready at a moment's notice. Liu was impressed by Aang's experienced method of luring demons. His ability to attract one no-fin demon at a time significantly reduced the difficulty of capturing them. From Liu's perspective, the novel approach of using brute force was both exciting and refreshing. She quickly adapted to this new style and progressed rapidly. When Aang signaled her to attack, Liu moved swiftly, and together, their movements were light and precise, as if they were playing with the demon. They continued to beat it until it fainted, reminiscent of their past methods. Aang reflected on how his new body still required a lot of training, even though he had once easily captured no-fin demons in his previous life. Liu mentioned that they had finally captured the third demon and expressed her exhaustion. Aang instructed her to leave them there. Liu hesitated and asked if he was sure. Aang assured her that the no-fin demons lacked intelligence and wouldn't know how to rescue one of their own. They were unlikely to approach the town, so the 3 demons would be safe where they were. The method of striking the demons' heads ensured they would remain unconscious for some time, allowing them to return in the morning to complete the mission. Liu asked how Aang knew so much about this technique. Aang admitted he might have revealed more than intended. Suddenly, 2 one-fin demons appeared, their scent unmistakably human. Aang was alarmed to see 2 of these demons at once, and wondered why they had appeared simultaneously. He and Liu were not well matched against them. The town's alarm sounded, and Yaot, Joel, and Yoshi rushed to the top of the main gate. Joel informed the guards that one-fin demons had been detected and instructed them to sweep the area with searchlights. Yoshi questioned what was happening and whether these demons were the same as those from the exam. Yaot clarified that they were not. The guards soon located the 2 one-fin demons. Joel, surprised, wondered if something was drawing them in. He instructed to stay calm, close the gates, and prepare the defense cannons. As the cannons readied for action, Yaot ordered not to close the gates because someone was still outside. He was infuriated to see Liu and Aang outside and demanded to know why they were out there. Yoshi wondered why those 2 were outside. They discovered 3 no-fin demons tied up, and Yaot realized what had happened. The two wanted to make amends for the mission that had been sabotaged earlier in the day. Joel added that their overconfidence and rash actions were common downfalls among rookie warriors. Angered, Yacht decided to punish them both when they returned. He rushed towards the demons, while Yoshi informed Joel that she would accompany Yacht, leaving the area to him. Joel felt that his hard-earned night of drinking had been ruined. The one-fin demons realized that the warriors had noticed them. Aang asked Lu to hold back, and they would wait for support while trying to hold out. Aang wondered if he was the target, questioning whether this was similar to the last incident, and whether it was due to his reincarnation or something that had happened inside the tunnel. Lu suggested they fight together. The demons questioned whether they were resisting, and then they descended, with one rushing to attack Lu, deeming her useless. But Aang saved Lu by pushing her out of the way. The demon remarked on Aang's quick reaction. Lu responded by kicking the demon and noticed some water, wondering if she had missed. The second one-fin demon ensnared her with 3 threads. The first demon instructed Aang to stay focused. Yacht arrived, delivering a punch to the demon and declaring that he wouldn't let the demons harm the warriors. He reassured everyone to stay calm, stating that everything was under control. Yoshi observed that the demons seemed to be a blue core water type and a red core earth type. She decided to prioritize saving Liu. The earth-type demon commented that it was fortunate he had blocked the attack, or he might have lost his head. Joel, assessing the situation, wondered if they were at a standstill, and then ordered to hold the defense cannons. A girl approached Joel, informing him that they had detected a massive number of no-fin demons headed their way. Joel asked how many demons there were. She replied that it was difficult to count, as it seemed like a horde. Seeing the overwhelming number of demons approaching, Joel ordered the alarm to be sounded and instructed all the warriors to take their battle stations. As the alarm rang, the warriors realized it was a demon horde alert and quickly assembled on the wall. Yaot saw the demon horde and remarked that it seemed they had come prepared. Aang noted that the demons had bypassed them and were heading towards the town. Yoshi mentioned that the 2 one-fin demons had summoned the entire horde, so they needed to resolve the situation quickly. Liu urged them not to worry about her and to focus on defending the town. She felt she had been careless and had become a burden to the captains, referring to herself as a failure as a team leader. Suddenly, a demon covered her mouth to silence her. Yayot and the others retreated from the area. The second demon attacked them, and Yayot instructed Yoshi to keep an eye on it. Yoshi managed to break the spikes being launched. Aang noticed that the demons weren't attacking him directly. As Aang passed by the one-fin demon, it told him to proceed. Yaot realized that the demon had not stopped Aang and wondered why. The demon then rushed to attack them, warning them to stay focused, or they would die. Meanwhile, another demon took Liu away. Aang wondered if this was a trap designed to separate him from the captains. He decided to stay calm and not act rashly, acknowledging that he wasn't strong enough to handle the situation recklessly. Yaot and Yoshi instructed Aang not to pursue Liu, warning him that he wouldn't stand a chance against the one-fin demon. However, Aang couldn't shake the feeling that Liu's eyes seemed familiar to him, and he couldn't bear to leave her to die. Ignoring their warnings, he rushed to follow the one-fin demon. The demon set Liu down and remarked on how intriguing it was. The demon was fascinated by humanity's many emotions and had heard that humans often scream when they feel hopeless. It then demanded Liu beg to satisfy its curiosity. Noticing that Liu's mouth was bound, the demon realized why she wasn't screaming and freed her mouth, insisting she beg. However, Liu refused, saying the one-fin demon was unworthy of her pleas. The demon questioned whether it wasn't worthy, to which Liu responded that she came from a martial family and would not kneel to an enemy, as showing weakness was a disgrace. She demanded either death or combat. Infuriated by her defiance, the demon struck her, declaring she would die. At that moment, Aang arrived, demanding the demon release Liu. Liu, surprised to see Aang alone, questioned why he had come by himself. The demon was pleased to see the bait had worked and that Aang, the main target, had arrived. Liu wondered why Aang was the target. Aang asked Liu if she was all right. She confirmed she was and asked why he had come alone, as he would not be able to keep up with the one-fin demon. She urged him to run away. The demon struck Liu, ordering her to be silent. Aang pleaded with the demon not to hurt Liu, offering to take her place if it would let her go. The demon, however, charged at Aang, declaring that they would all die. Aang attempted to counterattack, but the demon dodged his strike and hit him instead. Aang realized that his body was struggling to react quickly enough to the demon's attacks. The demon remarked that Aang smelled like them and expressed curiosity about why. Aang wondered if the demon was of the water type and noted that demons had evolved significantly over the past 50 years, gaining numerous attributes. His own frail body could only mimic past movements, rendering him unable to use his abilities effectively, which meant he wouldn't last long in this fight. Liu was worried, realizing that Aang would die if things continued this way, and she cursed him for coming alone. Determined not to remain passive, she resolved to take action. Meanwhile, Aang was battling the demon and seized an opportunity to strike. The demon taunted Aang, noting that he had already killed a one-fin demon in the cave, questioning why he appeared so weak now. Aang replied that he didn't understand the demon's comments and asked when he had ever liked a one-fin demon, finding the accusation nonsensical. The demon told Aang that he didn't like his tone and would punish him accordingly. He performed a strange and painful act on Aang, warning that if he lied, he would die. Then he attacked Aang, causing him to fall back and become entangled with several trees. Aang, in agony, wondered if the demon had ruptured all his organs. Liu, seeing Aang's suffering, felt a sense of urgency to help. The demon approached Aang and warned that if he didn't reveal the information, he would be eaten, which would somehow contribute to the demon's evolution. As the demon moved to capture Aang, Liu intervened with a fierce attack, knocking the demon away and telling him to keep his hands off her teammate. Aang thought Liu had forcefully extricated herself from the situation, her wrists and ankles burning. Liu confronted the demon, declaring that if he wanted to kill someone, he should kill her first. The demon agreed and instructed her not to dodge his attacks. He then assaulted Aang from all directions, while Liu remained in place, blocking each attack. Aang urged her to dodge, but Liu explained that if she moved, the attacks would hit him instead. She asked him to let her focus. Despite her efforts, some spikes emerged from the ground and struck her feet. The demon captured her and declared that instead of killing her, he would torture her to make her scream. Aang lay there, watching in despair, and thought about how ironic it was that despite his reincarnation, he still had to witness his teammates die before him. He felt a deep frustration at having to be saved by a girl, and questioned how he could protect others when he couldn't even protect himself. He wondered why he had to endure the death of his teammates once more, and why he felt so weak. Suddenly, Aang unleashed a tremendous amount of aura, freeing Liu from the demon's grasp. The demon, puzzled by Aang's action, questioned whether it was merely the wind pressure that had caused the release, noting that Aang hadn't actually attacked him. Aang told Liu that she had done well for her first time as squad leader and instructed her to leave the rest to him. He gently laid her down. The demon, sensing a familiar smell, speculated that there were secrets about Aang. Aang, confused by the demon's comments, felt a surge of power emanating from his chest, rising upwards with an intense pressure as if it was about to burst forth. In a fit of rage, Aang's core began to shine brightly. The demon, noticing the transformation, wondered if it was a King Fin core. Liu saw the rays emanating from Aang and heard him declare that he knew the one-fin demon was going to die. Aang had awakened to his one-fin form. Meanwhile, Yaot and Yoshi were engaged in combat with another demon. The demon, feeling disoriented, sensed a powerful aura similar to its own. Yaot landed a punch, followed by Yoshi's kick, which left a noticeable hole in the demon. The demon, enraged by the damage, began to glow with intense energy. Yoshi noted that it was self-destructing and asked Yaot what he planned to do while she prepared to protect him. The demon proclaimed that all humans would perish. At that moment, a blast of immense speed, delivered by a spear, propelled the demon away to a considerable distance. Yoshi identified the attack as coming from the defense cannon. Joel, along with the others, was battling the no-fin demons and noted the sheer number of them, realizing there seemed to be no end. He reported that the horde was advancing and called for Yoshi and Yaot to join him. Yoshi instructed Yaot that they needed to return to the town immediately. Yaot then wondered if Liu had asked about Aang. Yoshi acknowledged that she understood Yaot's feelings, but reminded him that their roles extended beyond that of mere captains. They were warriors first. They hurried back to assist the town. The one-fin demon questioned Aang about his similarity to them, wondering if he was a one-fin demon himself. Despite Aang's apparent strength, the demon was perplexed by the presence of human fins, which seemed impossible. Aang speculated that his reincarnation might have granted him the powers of demons, and that he might be able to change things in the future. He then used his healing power on Liu. The one-fin demon was astonished and inquired if Aang was of the wood type. Aang responded that he vaguely remembered certain things, possibly because he had absorbed a one-fin wood-type demon. He suspected that he could gain the water-type powers by absorbing a one-fin water-type demon. The one-fin demon was taken aback by the level of power Aang exhibited, which he had never seen before. Aang summoned roots to appear behind him and declared that he was seeking to harness the power of the demon. The demon was terrified to learn that Aang had absorbed a wood-type demon. Aang found it intriguing, noting that he had never seen demons show fear in his previous life. He approached the demon closely and challenged it to attack him with everything it had, wanting to gauge the demon's current strength. The demon questioned whether Aang was a demon or a human before launching an attack. Aang wondered if this was elemental control and recalled that the wood-type demon he had absorbed could perform similar feats. Tentacles emerged to grasp the demon, and Aang remarked that it didn't seem particularly challenging. He made the demon experience pain, prompting it to resort to its trump card. The demon unleashed water whips against Aang, but he managed to dodge them. The demon then charged at Aang with renewed ferocity, declaring that he would not kill the demon. Unlike the water type, the wolf type had its own unique characteristics. The demon struck Aang, laughing and boasting that Aang would never understand the true strength of a demon. As he spoke, he delivered a powerful kick to Aang. Aang fell, crashing into the trees, and admitted that the demon was right. He didn't fully understand the strength of a demon. He reflected that if the demon had known how quickly he could learn, it would have realized that Aang was the mightiest warrior. To defeat the demon, Aang needed to continually learn and adapt to its strength. The demon speculated whether this was a result of wood-type recovery, and Aang understood instantly. Determined, Aang charged at the demon. The demon was ensnared by the roots, and Aang seized its face, stating that he had grown bored of their fight. The demon felt something strange within its body before its form was blasted apart. Despite the destruction, its face and water crystal remained intact, and the demon claimed it could disperse its body. Aang countered that while the demon's body might be dispersible, the core, the most crucial part, could not be. He noted the demon's overconfidence and then proceeded to extract the demon's core. He explained that even if the demon were a 7-fin type, it would still die if its core was destroyed. Aang took the water core and crushed it, drinking its essence to absorb its power. Aang noted that it didn't taste bad. The demon inside him urged him to consume more demons and kill the humans. As he slashed at Lu's shield, Aang struggled to suppress the demon within him. He wondered how he could ever kill his own teammate, realizing that he could never do that, and was determined to save her. He pleaded with the demon inside him to leave him alone. The scene shifts to the main gate of the town, where the warriors were fighting against the no-fin demons. Lance observed that the demons were slowly climbing up and, while punching them, asked Misa where Lu and Aang were, noting that only those two were missing. As Misa continued to dispatch demons, she mentioned having heard some warriors talk about two who had sneaked out and were targeted by a one-fin demon. She speculated that these could be Aang and Lu. Lance was shocked to hear that the two had sneaked out. Misa asked him to stop pressing her for information, explaining that the two were indeed targeted by the one-fin demons, and she had no idea what had happened to them. She also wondered why the one-fin demons had appeared so suddenly. Lance instructed her to focus on the demon horde for the time being and continue fighting. Finally, Yoshi and Yacht joined the battle. Joel asked about their cores. Yacht replied that the depletion rate was under control and that Yoshi's core should be in a similar condition. Yoshi asked Joel if he had any plans. Joel explained that since Yoshi and Yacht had killed a one-fin demon, the attacks of the normal demons had weakened. However, the other one-fin demon was not present, and the remaining demons were behaving like a leaderless mob without any clear motive, despite the fact that no fin demons lacked complex thoughts. Joel suggested that they exploit the demons' fear of death. By instilling fear and wearing down their will to fight, they could buy time for the warriors on the wall to regroup. He instructed Yoshi and Yaot to take care of their own cores and to make their next move as impactful as possible. Both agreed, and they ascended to a high position. As they descended, they unleashed a massive explosion. Yoshi noted that, including the previous fight with the one-fin demon, this would be the second time they had used their cores in such a powerful way. Yacht remarked that if only the fire core within him could keep up, he could maintain this state indefinitely. Joel remarked that the explosive power of the red strength core was quite terrifying, and then he plunged into the demons, slashing through them. From above, Misa observed that it was her first time seeing a captain's attacks executed with such intensity. Yaot realized that this level of power must come from the one-fin core and aspired to reach such a level of warrior caliber himself. After a while, Joel checked on Yaot and Yoshi to see if they were all right. Yaot confirmed that he could handle the burden and that his body was holding up. Yoshi mentioned the thrill of the battle. Joel surveyed the scene and noted that their tactics seemed to be working. He then encouraged the warriors to steel themselves and continue fighting. The demonic horde was being pushed back, and the hunters were pleased to hear this. Joel suddenly felt something was amiss and pointed out that something was approaching. As it drew closer, it became clear that it was Aang carrying Lu. Yoshi wondered where the one-fin demon was. Joel told Aang that, even though they had broken the resolve of the no-fin demons, Aang shouldn't act so brazenly among them. If the demons reacted, they would do so instantly. As if on cue, the demons roared and began attacking Aang. The three captains rushed in to save him. Aang only saw them as he exerted pressure to make them all fall. The demons then started to flee. The warriors were elated as the horde retreated. Some wondered why the demons had suddenly withdrawn and whether they were afraid of the captains. Others agreed, noting that the demons were likely terrified after witnessing the captains' incredible display of force. The warriors praised their captains for their bravery and strength. Yacht wondered if the retreat was due to their actions or if Aang had played a part. As Aang returned to normal, he noticed that the captains were coming to assist them. In his dreams, Aang spoke with the 8-fin demon, who told him that Aang must surely enjoy his powers. When Aang asked who he was, the demon replied that Aang had seen him before, though it had been over half a century ago, and he should remember. Aang realized that the demon before him was one of the 8-fin demons, and he asked how many there were. The demon replied not to worry, all doubts would be cleared in time. The demon then appeared before Aang, who was lying down, and introduced himself as the Crimson King Fin, the strongest of his kind. He noted that Aang did not panic upon seeing him, which was expected from the mightiest warrior, and that Aang's willpower to resist his manipulation was impressive. The Crimson King assured Aang that he would not be harmed. Aang asked why the demon had chosen his body and what had happened to his own. At that moment, another 8-fin demon emerged from behind Aang. Touching his face, the demon said that Aang would understand in time. He explained that Aang's body was now infused with the power of Crimson, and for both their sakes, Aang needed to work hard and evolve. The Crimson King added that, after this, they would become ever closer to the perfect version of himself. Aang, growing angry, questioned what the demons took humans for, and then got to his feet and punched the demon. In reality, Aang rushed to attack and grabbed Liu's shirt, preparing to punch her. He then regained his senses and wondered what he was doing. Liu slapped him, and others questioned why Aang had acted this way. Jun then arrived and asked if this was how they should treat their savior. The others greeted him as master, while Liu referred to him as father. Joel informed Aang that Sun was the head of the Saito martial family and asked why Aang did not recognize him, given that he was from Hellos. Aang realized that Sun was the father of his teammate and surmised that he had been cared for even while unconscious. He apologized to Sun for the trouble he had caused. Shun reassured Aang not to worry and expressed gratitude on behalf of the Sato family, acknowledging that Aang had saved Sun's daughter. He thanked Aang for his bravery. Jun then instructed all the captains to rest in the training area for the time being and announced that they would celebrate the defeat of the demonic horde later that night. The 3 captains apologized for any inconvenience caused. Jun mentioned that he had been watching the 3 of them since they were children, so they didn't need to be overly polite and should treat the place as their home. He acknowledged that he would be troubled by looking after Liu, as she was naturally stubborn. He instructed them to put her in her place if necessary, and not to show her any mercy. Yacht suggested leaving the rest to them, assuring that they would handle their duties. He then asked everyone else to leave, except for Aang and the 3 captains. Once they were alone, Yacht asked Aang what he knew about the 1-fin demon that had appeared during the exam and the demonic horde. Joel added that, despite Aang being a member of Yacht's team, there was no room for hesitation. He then bluntly asked Aang if he was a demon. Aang asked if they were serious, reminding them that he and Liu had barely escaped from the 1-fin demon. Joel pointed out that Yoshi and Yaot had defeated a 1-fin demon together, and questioned whether Aang was claiming to have defeated one on his own. He then demanded to know how Aang had managed to escape. Aang wondered if there was really no other way to explain his actions, and what excuse he could offer. Joel pressed him, suggesting that Aang might be working with the demons, which could explain why the demons allowed him to escape each time. Aang contemplated whether he really had to reveal his secret and what the consequences might be. He feared that if he confessed, they might kill him immediately, and he worried that they wouldn't believe he was human. Instead, they would see him as a threat due to the powerful demon within him. Joel's stern expression made it clear that he wanted answers. Aang wondered if he truly had to fight against them, and if this situation was really happening. Yoshi intervened, telling Joel that it was enough. He explained that only a 4-fin demon could transform into a human, and it didn't seem likely that Aang was such a demon. Even if he were, there would be no reason for him to come to a sea-level town like theirs. Yacht explained that demons were inherently selfish and lacked the concept of teamwork, so they wouldn't help others. Since Aang had saved Liu, Yacht concluded that he couldn't be a demon. Joel then patted Aang on the back, revealing that he had been teasing and questioning why everyone was so serious. He acknowledged that Aang and Liu had narrowly escaped death and must be exhausted. Yaot added that Liu had mentioned passing out after battling the 1-fin demon and did not remember what happened afterward. He asked Aang how he managed to escape with Liu. Yoshi inquired if Aang had defeated the one-fin demon. Aang reflected on how he had indeed defeated it, and realized that his worry about the demon within him had nearly made him forget. He claimed that he was a genius, and acknowledged that his ability was a bit much. He explained that he could instantly optimize and enlarge the core's strength, which allowed him to briefly surpass his current power. This was his secret trump card. Yoshi noted that Aang's description of his abilities sounded similar to how they used their core's power explosively. Aang agreed and wondered if they would believe him if he explained further. Joel remarked that if what Aang said was true, then Aang was indeed a genius. Yacht asked if Aang was suggesting that he used this skill to defeat the demon in the cave as well. Aang confirmed that he had invented this technique the first time he faced a one-fin demon. He explained that his body had absorbed all the power from the core instantly, allowing him to defeat the demon with a single attack. He had blasted the demon to pieces when its guard was down, but because it was his first time using the technique, he passed out afterward. He had used the same technique again to save Liu, but his body could not handle the output, causing him to pass out once more. Yacht considered that if Aang's account was true, it would explain why the core in his chest was damaged both times. The amount of power had exceeded the limits. He marveled at Aang's genius. Yoshi agreed that if Aang's explanation was accurate, it validated Aang's claim that it was too much for him to handle. Yoshi noted that their technique was similar, but they had trained to limit the burden on their bodies when using their core explosively. Since Aang could not control it as they did, he advised that Aang should refrain from using the technique again, until he learned to control it properly. Yacht agreed with Yoshi and said that if Aang was truly a genius, there was no reason to turn down a sparring match. They moved to an open area with Aang preparing to face Yacht. He thought that Yacht still didn't fully trust him. Yacht, appearing enraged, challenged Aang to attack. Aang braced himself, wondering how he would fight Yacht. Even though his current power was considered basic compared to his past abilities, his body couldn't handle a full-on fight. He contemplated whether he should try using the demon's strength. Yacht rushed in with incredible speed, but Aang managed to dodge, witnessing massive destruction as a result. Yoshi called out to Yacht, urging him to control himself. Yacht replied that, if nothing else, Aang's reactions were commendable. Aang realized he was relying entirely on his past life experience, but this was already his limit. As Yacht attacked again, Aang dodged and noticed that Yacht was causing extensive damage to the arena, treating it as if it were his own home. Yacht moved swiftly to grab Aang by the neck, asking if that was all he had to offer. Aang realized that his body couldn't escape Yacht's grip. Yacht then slammed Aang against the side wall. Joel observed that Yacht was going overboard and suggested they stop him. Yoshi reassured him that Yacht wasn't the type to harm someone unnecessarily. Yacht taunted Aang, questioning whether he truly deserved the title of genius. Aang, unwilling to be looked down upon, recalled that he was called a king by the warriors. He thought that if Yacht knew who he really was, he might view Aang differently. Since Aang had claimed to be a genius, he felt compelled to demonstrate something worthy of the title. Acknowledging his reincarnation, Aang decided to stop adhering to his old limitations. He resolved to use the demon's power within him, considering that Yacht, being a 209-month-old child himself, wouldn't mind a little trickery. Aang unleashed his aura, surprising Yoshi. He challenged Yacht, saying it was his turn to attack. Yacht sensed something unusual in the air. Aang believed that by harnessing the demon's power, he could even enhance the synchronization rate of the low-quality core in his chest. It seemed he could unlock the body's full potential merely by altering his consciousness. Joel wondered if he could also sense this increase in synchronization. Yoshi questioned whether it was truly possible for an obscure sea-level town like Helos to produce someone as talented as Aang. Yacht noticed that Aang's synchronization rate had risen to 40% and was still climbing. Liu's rate was at 39%, and Aang had surpassed her. Aang instructed Yacht to stay focused before rushing in to punch him. Yacht realized that Aang was now twice as fast and that his own performance had improved. Aang mentioned that it was merely a feint. Yacht suspected that Aang was using the brief lapse in his reaction and a low body attack to throw him off balance, and that Aang was not attacking recklessly. Then Aang delivered a kick to Yacht as well. Joel thought it was a barrage of attacks and wondered where Aang had acquired such a high level of battle experience. Shun arrived, noting that it wasn't a good idea to be in close range with a brawler like Yacht. Yoshi and Joel approached Shun, who asked when he had arrived. Shun explained that he had come while they were focused on the battle. Joel apologized, explaining that Yacht wanted to use the training ground for a small spar with Aang, and apologized again for the minor disturbance. Shun glanced at the broken floor and inquired if that was the minor disturbance Joel mentioned. Joel assured him that Yacht would cover the damage. Jun said it was fine and expressed curiosity about Aang, who shared the same name as the mightiest warrior. He wondered how Aang would handle Yaot's counterattacks. Yaot had caught Aang's leg. Shun remarked that Yaot had always been like that. As soon as he saw an opportunity to counter, even if just for a moment, he would seize it with precision. His many years of fighting demons had only sharpened his judgment. Shun observed that having his ankles and movements seized in this manner would be difficult for Aang to escape, and it seemed Yaot was about to learn a painful lesson. Aang told Yaot that it was actually he who had caught Yaot. Aang struck Yaot's head with his own, landing a solid hit. Yaot wondered what had just happened. Aang explained that while the human skull was fairly durable, the area between the eyes was softer. He then charged in to attack again. Despite the incoming blow, Yaot remained steadfast. Joel watched in shock. Aang unleashed a massive blast, breaking the ground and demonstrating an all-in-one offensive and defensive technique. He decided to test the demon's power further. With immense force, Aang attacked again, causing Yaot to retreat in fear. Yaot vanished and reappeared behind him. Yoshi was stunned as Aang used the dust to maneuver into Yaot's blind spot and turn Yaot's own move against him. Joel remarked that Aang was quite vengeful, while Soon noted that he was a remarkably fast learner. Yaot managed to grab Aang, reminding him not to forget that this was his move and that he knew it better than anyone. Jun commented that Yaot was now losing his edge. Aang threw a punch but intentionally missed, creating immense pressure. Yaot wondered why Aang had missed. Aang explained that he preferred grappling techniques, and, had they used them from the start without holding back, he would have had no chance. Yaot took a hit to the head, which blurred his vision and caused him to misjudge the situation momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, Aang managed to gain the upper hand. Now, everyone believed in his skill. Shun continued to wonder about Aang's true abilities. At that moment, the gate opened, and Misa, carrying a lance, along with Liu, entered. Misa asked what was happening, noting that dinner was almost ready, and Liu's family had prepared some exquisite dishes in a large room. She was shocked by the destruction around them. Aang explained that most of the damage was the captain's fault. Liu inquired if this had been a sparring match. Joel told Yaot that he had lost. Aang mentioned that he often forgot against demons, and the sudden change in the opponent's size and style had caught him off guard. Shun advised them to set aside formalities. The sparring match was over, and it was time to start the feast. Aang expressed his hunger and thanked Shun for the invitation. Shun reflected on Aang's determination, power, restraint, and incredible battle experience, noting that Aang had shown remarkable potential and had not gone overboard, allowing Yaot to save face. Jun then asked Liu if she was interested in Aang, which shocked her. Everyone gathered to sit down for dinner. Shun raised a drink and asked to be allowed to speak on behalf of the town, expressing gratitude for their protection and honoring the warriors who had fought until their last breath. He said they were eternally grateful and praised Aang for his incredible actions, particularly for saving Liu. Aang stood up, saying there was no need for thanks. As he was about to take a sip of alcohol, Yaot punched him, reminding him that he was not old enough to consume it. Aang responded, stating that he was 18 and questioned if Yaot didn't have to be 18 to participate in the warrior exam. Yoshi noted that Yaot had seized the opportunity to retaliate. Shun dismissed the incident, saying it was fine and that being of age was important. Liu recalled her earlier conversation with Shun, where he had mentioned observing their match. Jun had remarked that the lady was very skilled, and that Aang's talents and potential were on par with hers. He suggested that if Aang was as capable as he appeared, a self-reliant girl like Liu might indeed fall for him. Liu wondered about this and thought that Aang was somewhat foolish. Liu stopped her reflections as Misa began eating, noting how luxurious the food was. Misa commented on the quality and remarked that it felt like riding on the finest of coats. Lance asked Aang how he had managed to defeat the one-fin demon, suggesting that Aang must have been incredible. Yaot explained that Aang had been able to forcibly extract a large amount of power from the core, temporarily surpassing his usual limits in strength and power. Yoshi added that it was similar to how captains utilize the core, but Aang must have taken a life-threatening risk to achieve such a burst of power to escape certain death. This approach was incredibly dangerous. Without proper training, it placed a massive burden on his body, and repeated use could lead to irreparable damage. Joel mentioned that while allowing Aang and Yaot to spar had been enlightening, Aang's power was surprising. However, he needed more training, or his body might not withstand the strain. Aang thought to himself that if he revealed he had absorbed the cores of two one-fin demons and possessed the healing capabilities of a wood-type demon, which allowed him to rapidly recover from backlash, it might be too much information. He decided it was better to let them believe he used a similar technique to the captains to draw more power from the core. He confirmed that the captains were correct, and that's why he had passed out afterward. It was clear he needed to train his body significantly. Lance expressed surprise at Aang's abilities and remarked on how incredible he was, hoping they wouldn't fall behind. Liu marveled at Aang's capabilities, understanding now why he was able to save her. Yacht mentioned that they had initially intended to punish Aang and Liu for their actions during the Nightmare Expedition. However, seeing that they had both defeated a one-fin demon, they decided to let it slide, though he warned them not to repeat such behavior. Joel noted that there was no time to relax, as the squad competition was still ongoing. Yoshi pointed out that Liu's squad was currently in last place and needed to give their all from the following day. Aang stated that his squad's goal was to achieve the top rank. The scene shifts to a month later, with the squad competition entering its final and most intense phase. To secure more points, squads would be vying for A-level missions, which were themselves a challenge to acquire. Liu held a discussion with her squad and made a key decision. They would target a fattened sheep for high points and challenge the other groups. The leader of the Black Gun Squad asked Liu if they wanted to challenge for the points, reminding her of the kick they had received last time. Liu responded that it was enough talking and agreed to the 10 points. The boy noted that this was equivalent to the points for A-level missions and expressed indifference, stating they wouldn't need Yacht to come to their rescue. They were prepared to settle the score with Liu's squad for everything that had happened. The scene shifts to the town sparring arena, where news of the duel had spread, and all the warriors were discussing it. The leader of the Black Gun Squad told Aang that the audience was growing and suggested it was not too late to back out. He warned that if the Black Gun Squad appeared to be bullying Liu's team, it would reflect poorly on them. Aang replied that the outcome was still uncertain and questioned why the leader wasn't stepping into the ring personally. The boy responded that since Aang had sent a girl into the ring, he couldn't back down and make excuses. Fortunately, his vice leader was a girl who was more than capable of handling Aang's squad. Aang suggested that the boy should not underestimate Liu just because she was a girl, as she was far from average. Misa started clicking pictures, indicating that Liu was about to begin. Liu told her female opponent to end this quickly, aiming to secure the 10 points swiftly. The girl responded by acknowledging Liu as the young lady of the Sato family, known as the Solemn Rakshasi. She expressed hope that Liu would demonstrate something interesting. Liu charged forward to attack, but the girl managed to block the strike. She wondered how Liu, a green core recovery type, could move with such speed, comparable to a blue core agility type. Liu disarmed the girl and reflected that, while veteran teams had more experience and relied heavily on squad tactics, their individual skills often fell short. Although fighting as a team was effective, personal skills were essential and could not be neglected. The girl realized that Liu had injected power into her muscles, causing them to spasm uncontrollably. Liu pointed out that the girl was wide open, and such exposure was a taboo in a fight. Seizing the opportunity, Liu attacked the girl multiple times. The boy noted that the girl had been accurately struck in all her joints and muscles. Liu made the girl fall and reminded her not to forget that the Sato family excelled in physical techniques. The onlookers expressed their admiration for Liu, praising her impressive performance. The boy then asked for an additional 10 points, expressing his belief that Liu was exceptionally strong. He decided to approach Aang's squad and challenge them for a 20-point match. Liu agreed, feeling thrilled at the prospect of earning 20 points. Aang advised her to rest after her fight, as he would now take over. The boy told Aang that he wasn't worthy enough and announced that he would target Liu. Aang responded that if that were the case, and since Liu was the leader, the boy should defeat Aang first to prove his worthiness to challenge his leader. The boy didn't even have the confidence to face Aang, though it didn't matter much to him. The girl remarked that it was such a crude taunt. The boy then declared that he would beat Aang so severely that Aang wouldn't even recognize his own mother. His teammates were shocked to hear such a threat. Misa was now ready to capture a good shot of the duel. Aang and the boy took their positions on the battleground. The boy, drawing his gun, revealed that he had switched to air bullets used for training. He assured Aang that while the bullets would hurt, they wouldn't cause serious injury. Aang thought to himself that training bullets were a concept he hadn't encountered in his time. Back then, a ranged warrior would use live ammunition from the start. Aang told the boy not to miss his shots. One of the members of the Black Gun Squad commented that such words were expected from a rookie. The leader of the Black Gun Squad had top-notch aim among all the warriors, and he felt embarrassed for Aang. The leader told Aang that confidence was good, and that they were allowed to use any weapon. He then asked Aang to ensure he wouldn't accuse him of bullying. Aang recalled that he had a combat dagger, and mentioned that in his past life, he had used another weapon that was unique and considered it his companion. He wondered if it still existed. Aang decided to fight with his fists and asked the boy if that was acceptable. The boy was shocked by Aang's decision, and his teammates wondered what Aang was planning to do. The boy laughed derisively and questioned if Aang really intended to fight him unarmed. He wondered if all rookies had become so cocky. He gave Aang a chance, but since Aang chose to fight barehanded, the boy agreed to his request. Aang found the boy to be excessively talkative and thought someone should install a silencer on his mask. The boy warned Aang again that even if a lion were hunting a rabbit, it wouldn't hold back. He promised that he wouldn't show any mercy and would make sure to reclaim all the points they had lost. Aang agreed and expressed his hope that the boy would go all out. Lance wondered how their opponents would react when they found out that Aang had defeated the other one-fin demon and won his spar against Yacht. Misa mentioned that this was why she was eagerly anticipating Aang's battle. Lu thought that if Aang won against Yacht, it would imply he was better than her. As the squad leader, she couldn't allow her teammates to surpass her. She remembered her father's words whenever she looked at Aang and found herself unable to focus on those thoughts at the moment. When the battle started, the boy moved quickly, trying to gain some distance. He planned to turn Aang into a beehive before Aang could make any move against him. Liu noticed that the boy didn't fire immediately and repositioned himself. Aang thought that he had already shown his strength to the three captains, so there was no need to hide it any longer. His objective was clear. They were aiming to be the top rankers. Furthermore, if he intended to challenge the demon within him, he needed to recover the strength he had before. He must surpass his previous self and become stronger than ever. The boy prepared to attack, declaring that he wouldn't show any mercy to Aang. Aang thought that this would be an opportunity to train the demon within him and turn it into his own strength. He dodged the bullet and charged towards the boy. The boy referred to Aang as an idiot and pointed out that he was holding a guided missile in his right hand. The boy fired a barrage of bullets, and Aang realized that the high-velocity, lock-on bullets would be difficult to evade, even for agility-type blue core demons. If even one of them landed, it could be disastrous. Aang was glad he had chosen this boy as his opponent, as it would allow him to test his current capabilities. He decided to use his water skills to mount an attack. Onlookers marveled at how Aang dodged the bullets, noting that his movements were as fluid as water. The boy remarked that he hadn't wanted to use his trump card just yet. A member of the Black Gun Squad thought that his leader's gun was excellent at storing power and could imbue the bullets with energy for a more powerful strike. As Aang approached the gun, his opponent challenged him to see how he would evade the high-accuracy explosive rounds from point-blank range. Aang punched the gun, sending the shot into the air and causing the boy's aim to miss. Aang then struck the boy's hand to take control of the gun and kicked him, making him fall. Aang placed his foot on the gun and announced that he had earned 20 points. The boy trembled and insisted that it was impossible. Lance and Mina praised Aang for his performance. Liu, unable to clearly see what had happened, wondered where Aang had learned such skills. The squad ultimately gained 30 points from their encounter with the Black Gun Squad and attracted the attention of others. Soon, many more warriors, including older squads, came to challenge them. Motivated by the thrill of victory, Liu's squad accepted these challenges, with points on the line. They won more than they lost, and their points soared at an alarming rate. By the end of the month, despite the envy of other squads, Liu's squad stood at the top of the rankings and secured their place in the finals. The final competition was set to be held between 3 squads. The scene shifts to the 3 captains, where Yoshi expresses her emotions every time they return to the ruins at the end of the month. She observes their squads improving step by step and notes that it is usually the same faces each time. She then inquires how Liu's squad managed to shoot to the top of Yacht's squad rankings in just a few days. They had defeated 8 different teams, and she heard they used their points strategically to challenge other squads and won most of their fights. Yoshi criticizes this as a ridiculous method and asks Yacht to put a stop to it. Yacht replies that the points were earned through their own strength, and there is no reason to stop them. He adds that with Aang and Liu on their team, their squad is already strong. He has secretly observed a few of their fights and found that the other 2 members of their squad are also quite capable. They arrive at a gate, and Joel comments that it has been many years since a new squad entered the squad finals, creating quite a commotion outside. Yacht opens the gate, steps onto the ground, and expresses his anticipation for the upcoming matches. A girl asked how a squad that couldn't even make it to the finals could be considered a threat, and whether the other squads under Yacht were so weak. Another girl warned her that they might overhear. The girl speaking was from Yoshi's team, the Sunflower Squad. Joel's team, the Luminous Squad, was also present. They commented that Yacht's side was full of rookies and dismissed the hype surrounding them as false rumors. Meanwhile, Liu's squad was stretching, and Misa remarked that they all looked so intimidating. Lance mentioned that the Starflower and the Luminous squads were the strongest teams under Yoshi and Joel and were well known in Helos. He added that the next 3 captains, who would succeed Yoshi, Yacht, and Joel, were expected to come from these top squads. Aang said it was fine and assured his squad that they just needed to give their all. He thought that even though his body was still lacking, with his secret power, he wouldn't lose to anyone at or below Yacht's 1 fin core strength. He was confident that winning should be a breeze, and he was mainly curious about the prize. Yoshi asked her squad to gather. When they assembled, the leader told Yoshi that they were all ready and requested something special in addition to the prize if they won, specifically, a shopping trip with Yoshi to a B-level town. A boy from the Luminous squad asked if the Starflower squad's great ambition was to go shopping with Yoshi, expressing that his squad hoped to face stronger warriors in a B-level town and wanted to spar with them. The girl from the Starflower squad was annoyed and pointed out that the boy wouldn't understand how important clothes shopping was for the girls. She found his comments irritating and thought they would never get along with the Luminous squad. Joel and Yacht arrived, and Joel remarked on how lively the young ones were. He joked about sensing sparks of love in the air, to which the boys responded that Joel never took things seriously. Yacht then asked Lu's squad to gather as well. Once they were assembled, Yacht mentioned that since they all knew each other somewhat, he wouldn't introduce them individually. He explained that the finals would be divided into team and solo matches, with the winner being the squad that accumulated the most points. Yoshi added that the rules for each match would be revealed when the time came, and they would announce the prize for winning to fuel their competitive spirit. She assured them that everyone was eager for the prize, and they would surely appreciate what they had in store. Joel announced that the first-place prize would be a 1-week training session in a B-level town, which delighted the contestants. Lance remarked that this was finally something worthy of their time spent on missions. The other warriors began discussing their plans for the B-level town. Misa, for instance, wanted to bring a good camera. Yacht then asked the squad leaders to come forward to draw lots. As the leaders drew their lots, the other warriors continued to speculate about the challenges they would face. Aang reflected on the many changes he was encountering. The classification of towns hadn't been so clearly defined in his time. Back then, towns were independent, and warriors could only rely on themselves. He remembered Lance mentioning that the town was classified as C level, the lowest rank, with B and A level towns above it. A-level towns were based on the strength and level of their warriors. Generally, towns with 1 or 2 fin warriors were considered C level, while those with 2 or 3 fin warriors were B level. Towns with 3, 4, or 5 fin warriors were A level. The only S-level settlement, according to Lance, was the city itself. The city was located at the heart of the Land of Hope. It was massive and boasted not only 5 or 6 fin core warriors, but also the strongest 7 fin core warrior, where humanity's most formidable fighting force congregated. The only S-level settlement was that grand city, and its fame seemed immense. Aang wondered how it compared to the town he had once been in charge of, and whether his old town still existed 60 years after that massive battle. He reminisced about his old, reliable teammates. Lance called Aang, noting that he appeared to be daydreaming. Misa pointed to Lu and told Aang to get ready. Lu realized they were the first to compete. Yacht announced that all weapons had been swapped for training weapons, and the first match would be between Lu's squad and the Luminous squad. Misa commented that they still didn't have a name and wondered if they would come up with one. Lance agreed, suggesting they needed a good name for when they became famous. Aang thought it was a good suggestion and said they should discuss it later. Liu, meanwhile, was feeling nervous. The leader of the Luminous squad sneered, questioning how a ragtag group like theirs could hope to win. He instructed his members to focus on taking out their opponents, leaving Liu to him. Yacht then signaled for the battle to begin. Liu realized that the battle was starting as a one-on-one match, and that the strategy was effective when their opponents were stronger. She regretted the circumstances and directed her team to group up. Aang observed that Liu seemed to have seen through their tactics. Her squad's most effective move would be to eliminate their leader, and he noted that the biggest flaw in the Luminous squad's strategy was that their entire team would crumble if they lost their leader. Liu's judgment, Aang thought, was commendable. The boy ordered his team to regroup and switch tactics, vowing that they would make Liu regret her decisions. As the battle began, Liu instructed her team to support her by covering her advances. Meanwhile, Aang, Lance, and Misa took down the other 3 Luminous squad members with precision strikes. The boy realized Liu was advancing directly toward him and warned her not to underestimate him. He rushed forward to engage Liu in combat. The boy attacked with a burst of red light. Liu instructed her team to close their eyes to protect themselves. She thought that the boy had concentrated energy in his hand to create a flashbang, which even affected his own teammates. Yacht mentioned that the boy was still fighting in that manner, and asked Joel if he hadn't advised the boy against it. Yacht noted that while the flash technique might be effective in a solo duel, it was problematic in a team battle because it also impacted his teammates. Joel replied that he had told the boy many times, but it had been to no avail. Sometimes, personal habits require a harsh lesson to correct. The boy believed that rookies shouldn't act arrogantly in front of his flash, and thought his team would be unable to fight back once he had dealt with the leader. As he prepared to attack again, Aang intervened, striking his hands and asking if he had ever considered his own teammates. Aang, wearing a water battle visor, then kicked the boy back. The boy, shocked, asked when Aang had equipped the visor. Aang replied that it was unwise to be separated from his team in battle. He thought that the lenses were made of water, and they were not only thick but also capable of diffracting light, which allowed them to negate a large portion of the blinding flash. By using the water element he had absorbed to create these diffraction lenses, he effectively reduced the amount of light, and it was fortunate that it worked. As the light finally dissipated, Liu noticed that the opposing team's leader was in poor condition, and wondered when Aang had managed to do this. Aang told her that he had left the task of finishing him to her. Liu wondered if Aang had already given the boy a good beating while everyone's eyes were closed. She then prepared to attack him directly, intending to make him blind again. However, as she raised her hand, she found it stuck and could not lift her arm. Aang had dislocated it. Liu told him they needed to finish this quickly, then punched him to the ground. Meanwhile, Aang was taking it easy, supporting Yoshi and Lance, who were both skilled fighters. The fights proceeded smoothly. Liu noted that the opponent's leader had already fallen and asked the opposing team if they still wished to continue. They chose to surrender. Joel commented that this outcome was expected. Yoshi pointed out that Aang hadn't even used his power yet. The Sunflower Squad's leader questioned the Luminous Squad's leader, asking if their loss was truly due to Liu's strength. The boy responded that they had simply been caught off guard and warned that the Sunflower Squad would be next. As the Sunflower Squad descended, their leader thought that the Luminous Squad's comments were irritating and bothersome. Yoshi informed them that all weapons had been switched to training mode and requested that the battle begin. The Sunflower Squad charged at Liu's team, and their leader instructed them not to be flustered by the Luminous Squad's tactics, to stick to their training, and to maintain their formation. Lance decided to channel all his power into a single punch. When he struck the ground, he unleashed a powerful shockwave that cracked the earth. Aang considered using his power if a smokescreen were created. Lance made roots erupt from the ground to ensnare all the opponents. They were shocked and wondered where this power had come from. Aang thought it was effective and realized there were many potential uses for the elements he had absorbed from demons. He wondered how many elements existed in total. Liu instructed Lance to continue his assault. Lance charged, but the opponents managed to evade his attack. The leader of the Sunflower Squad ordered evasive maneuvers and told her team to regroup. She believed their formation had been forcibly broken. Liu and Misa then attacked the leader, who tried to block their strikes and called for support. However, she saw that her teammates were already engaged in combat with Aang and Lance. The girl noticed that Aang was handling two of her teammates alone, and recalled the Luminous Squad's warning about Aang, noting that he was the strongest in Liu's squad and could influence the battle's outcome. Misa told the girl to focus, and the girl replied that she was an agility type. Misa then used her speed to attack the girl, ultimately leading to their victory. Yoshi declared that it was over, and Joel added that Liu's squad had won all the team battles. Now it was time for the solo duels. The warriors were informed that they could choose their opponents, so both the leaders of the Sunflower and Luminous Squads requested to battle Aang. Yao explained that the solo duels were to be one-on-one and asked who would go first. Aang, checking the time, responded that it was fine with him. He offered to face them both together. As the solo duels approached, Aang realized this would be the final fight and knew he needed to be serious. The boy remarked that it seemed Aang was underestimating both of them, while the girl vowed that Aang would regret his ignorance. Yoshi clarified that the rules remained the same as before. The duel would end when one side surrendered or could no longer continue. She then asked if they could begin. The two opponents charged at Aang together, with the boy attacking first. He questioned if Aang considered him an easy target, warning that he should not underestimate him. The boy used his flash attack again, and the girl wondered if they had restored their energy so quickly. She recalled the conversation with the boy, where he had assured her that since they were fighting Aang together, they could not afford to lose. He mentioned that the prize of advancing to the B-level town might still be within reach. He had a solid plan and handed her a special battle visor, explaining that it would help negate most of Aang's flash abilities. When he successfully blinded Aang, she would need to seize the opportunity to strike. The girl was taken aback by the value of the visor he was giving her. The boy emphasized that they couldn't underestimate Aang and needed to work together if they stood any chance of advancing to the B-level town. He reminded the girl to remember that the flash would be the signal, so she must not miss the opportunity. As the boy prepared to attack Aang, he declared that there was no way to escape, as his attack was 5 times stronger than before. Yoshi and the others struggled to see through the blinding light. The girl noted that the boy had converted a significant amount of gathered energy into an intense flash of light, even more powerful than the one used in the previous finals. Joel remarked that using such a large amount of energy meant that the core could not sustain it for long, indicating that they needed to finish this quickly. Misa admitted she was unable to see through the flash either. The leader of the Sunflower Squad thought that Aang would only be temporarily blinded and decided to maximize her agility to strike him down swiftly. As she located him and prepared to attack, Aang looked at her and said he knew she would come after him. The girl was shocked by his gaze, which felt as though something horrifying was fixed upon her. She felt as if she were being pulled down into a deep, cold ocean. Aang used the water element to capture the girl, causing her to scream in pain. The boy asked her why she was shouting. She explained that it was because Aang had attacked her, and the visor had fallen off, leaving her unable to see anything. Aang apologized, acknowledging that their plan had failed. He then used various elements to attack them both, causing them to fall. Yaot observed the flashes of light and dust and hoped the warriors knew how to control their power to avoid casualties. He jumped to the ground to check the situation and sensed a different aura. Aang announced that it was all over, and as the dust settled, the boy noticed someone standing in front of Yaot. He asked if that was their leader and whether they had won. Liu denied this and guessed that it would be Aang. Lance, Misa, and Liu approached Aang. Lance praised him, asking how he managed to counter their attacks amidst the blinding light and defeat 2 opponents simultaneously. He noted that they could only see clearly after the light had dissipated and acknowledged that the battle was over. Aang revealed that he had managed to grab their visor and expressed satisfaction with having taken those items. Liu wondered why Aang always made her feel that something was not quite right. Then, Yaot approached their squad, informing them that they had won the tournament and congratulating them. He remarked to Aang that he was constantly surprised by him, especially by how he managed to counter and attack the 2 squad leaders. Aang humbly replied that Yaot was flattering him. Aang thought to himself that he was the mightiest warrior and that not even the most challenging body could have caused him to lose to those opponents. He felt he could have won solely based on his battle experience, though he acknowledged that using his powers had made the fight easier. Yaot assured them that, in any case, they would be rewarded. The next day, they would be taken to the underground tunnel leading to the nearest B-level city, where they would begin a week of training. This news made everyone happy. Yaot told them to get ready and that they would meet in the morning. As they were leaving, Lance mentioned that he had heard there were 3 top warriors in those cities and was looking forward to meeting them. Misa offered to help him take a picture with them. Aang asked Liu what she planned to do while they were there. Liu replied that she was still thinking about it. Joel remarked that Aang was so formidable that even they might not be able to defeat him if he used all his power. Yaot responded that Aang didn't belong there and would continue moving forward. Joel added that taking them through the underground tunnel was a safer option compared to traveling above ground. Yoshi warned Yaot to stay alert, mentioning that some no-finish demons appeared there from time to time. Yaot reassured him to relax, stating that no amount of no-fins demons could pose a threat to them. He was confident that the 4 of them would be fine, even without his presence. The underground tunnel, once a bustling travel hub, was now in a state of ruin and primarily used just as a passage between cities. The scene then shifts to a terrified warrior running away, only to be killed by a 2-finned demon. The demon commented that the humans were weak and that it was so boring. It lamented its predicament, wondering how it had become lost underground. The next day, Yaot and Lin's squad arrived at the underground passage. Misa was thrilled to see it and excitedly took pictures. She remarked that the place seemed very old and asked when it had been built. Yaot revealed that it was older than he was. Misa commented on how desolate it appeared and wondered if people had really used the place. Yaot explained that after the fall of many great warriors in the Battle of Dawn, the number of elites had drastically decreased, making it impossible to expand territories or carry out missions. The number of power crystals they relied on had also dropped alarmingly. As they were severely lacking in power crystals, the once unparalleled underground network had gradually been abandoned. He noted that the network was built during the time of the greatest warrior, Aang. Misa expressed surprise that it was constructed during such a prominent era. Aang remarked that it was only natural. Yaot, growing irritated, clarified that Aang merely shared the name of the great warrior and had no connection to him. He ordered Aang not to make jokes about the mightiest warrior. Aang told Yaot that he was ruining the show. Misa commented that it felt like the captain's head was on fire. Yaot then composed himself, realizing that he had been too relaxed around them and had lost his cool. He reassured them and urged them to continue. Aang reflected on the structure, thinking it resembled something he had proposed in a past life. Yaot corrected him, explaining that it was actually a massive underground network connecting the cities, serving as the safest and most just merchant route. No one would have anticipated that such an impressive system would be abandoned after Aang's death. Lance inquired about the energy crystals Yaot had mentioned, asking if they were the same as the demon cores found in their chests. Yaot explained that the energy crystals could be seen as a union of many demon cores. A single demon core could enhance a warrior's power, but refining multiple demon cores together was a complex process. This line of experimentation led to repeated failures until they finally succeeded in creating a large-scale energy core, the energy crystal. This crystal was crucial for powering their cities. This was comparable to the electricity they had in the past, and high-level future operations would involve group hunts. The goal was to collect more demon cores to refine into energy crystals, which would then be distributed throughout the hierarchy. They were heading to the B-level city of Peta, not only to expand their knowledge, but also to acquire the energy crystals allocated to them. Misa asked what would happen if the city's energy core ran out and there were no replacements. Yacht responded that it would lead to total paralysis. Everyone was shocked to hear this. Yacht explained that without power, normal living conditions would be impossible. The city's most critical systems, such as the defense mechanisms and weapons, would become inoperative. In such a scenario, without protection and with many appliances out of service, humans would be forced to flee their homes, a city's greatest disaster. However, there was no need to worry. Since their town of Helos wasn't very large, their energy crystal could still last another 3 months. They typically traveled to Peta every month, so this was just a precautionary measure, and there was no immediate cause for concern. Misa felt that Yaot's explanation had scared her. Yaot warned them that they needed to be mentally prepared. A B-level city like Peta didn't only have 2 5-fin warriors, but also 3, including one whose synchronization rate was 69%. Liu, Misa, and Lance were shocked to hear this. Aang, on the other hand, thought to himself that he was a 7-fin warrior with a synchronization rate of 96%. As Misa noticed a button on the wall and reached to press it, she asked what it was. Aang quickly saw what she was doing and stopped her. Yaot scolded her for trying to touch anything and was relieved that Aang had intervened. Misa responded that the button seemed to be begging to be pressed, so her hand reached for it naturally. Yaot explained that the button was for an emergency seal. In the worst-case scenario, it would completely isolate that section of the tunnel from the rest. He pointed out a circle above them and told them that pressing the button would cause thick metal slabs to appear from both above and below, sealing off the area instantly. This measure was only to be used when no other options were available, to ensure the safety of the other cities connected to the tunnel. Aang thought that the most crucial feature of the tunnel was still operational. However, he sensed a killing intent coming from ahead, growing closer. He prepared for battle and moved forward a bit. Yaot then detected the smell of blood and, glancing at Aang, wondered if Aang had noticed it earlier. Yaot's nose was as sensitive as it could be, and he realized it was just instinct. Now was not the time to ponder this. He instructed Liu's squad to drop their bags and prepare for battle. As they moved forward, they saw blood, and Yaot wondered what was happening in Peta since the blood seemed to be coming from that direction. They encountered a warrior from Peta, severely injured, who asked if they were from Helos before collapsing. Aang asked the injured man if he was all right. Yaot inquired about what had happened in Peta. The man told them that a demonic horde had attacked the city. Yaot realized that Peta must have sounded the evacuation alarm. Liu, upon hearing this, asked if they needed to go help. Yaot explained that the only scenario in which the city would use the evacuation alarm was if all of its warriors were dead. Aang was enraged at the news of the city's fall and the countless lives lost once again. They saw sparks from the direction of Peta, indicating that something was attacking the injured warrior. Aang felt a pang of regret for not focusing and reacting sooner. As a demon appeared, it grabbed the injured man's head and looked around at the others. It declared that all of them needed to be killed and that the dead should not be speaking. With that, the demon killed the warrior. The demon pondered whom he should kill first. He attacked Lance, but Yaot intervened, deflecting the demon's strike away. The demon remarked that the new warrior was stronger than the previous one. Yaot realized that this was a 2-fin fire demon, exceptionally powerful. He knew he couldn't withstand another hit and needed to prioritize protecting the 4 of them. He didn't have the energy to overthink the situation. Yaot grabbed the 4 of them and led them to flee. The demon pursued them relentlessly. Yacht reached the button on the side wall, but the demon was closing in, taunting them with threats of death. Aang pressed the button, pushing Yacht and the others to safety. He stayed behind with the demon and the injured warrior from Peta. The demon declared that Aang was merely delaying the inevitable and promised that Aang would die. As the gate began to close to protect the others, Aang struck the button to activate the seal. Lu warned him to be careful. The gate finally closed, and she asked if he was all right. Yacht reminded them that not long ago, Aang had instructed them to save the three of them. He urged them to stay calm and recognize that Aang had given them a chance to survive, which they shouldn't squander. It wasn't safe to stay there, so he urged them to hurry and leave. Lance noted that the demon was a two-fin and that even Aang would find it troublesome. Misa agreed, stating that they couldn't simply abandon Aang. Liu, frustrated, insisted they would break the door to save him. Yaot explained that the door was made from a special material mixed with additional alloys, capable of withstanding attacks from three-fin demons. It was not easily broken, and the sealing was so effective that they couldn't even hear what was happening on the other side. There was nothing they could do. The three of them asked if there was another way to save Aang. Yaot admitted that even with the help of the other two captains, there was no guarantee of success. However, he then found a potential solution. He urged them to follow him, leading them to the offshoots of the tunnel. One of these tunnels led to the A-level city of Brian, where they could seek help. They continued running along the path Yaot had indicated. Yaot thought that choosing this route meant they were disregarding whatever was happening on the other side of the door, and they all had faith that Aang would survive. Meanwhile, Aang was engaged in battle with the demon. Revealing his true form, Aang declared that he was no longer hiding his power. The two-fin demon questioned whether Aang was a demon or a human. Aang responded that he wasn't even sure himself. However, if the two-fin demon tried a bit harder, Aang might have been forced to reveal his full transformation. For now, he was more interested in the demon's fire element. The two-fin demon wondered if Aang was a one-fin or if he was powerful. Aang used roots to attack the demon. The demon remarked that if Aang's wood element was of one-fin strength, then his fire element was the perfect counter. He unleashed a fierce blaze to destroy Aang's roots, declaring that he would consume Aang and turn him into power. The demon launched a fire blast, but Aang dodged the attack, causing the fire to strike the door instead. The demon taunted Aang, stating that he would be burned if he came any closer. As the demon attempted to escape, Aang used water to counteract the fire and created a powerful blast. He then seized the demon's core and lifted him up. A large number of demons attacked Aang, who discovered that they were all no-fin demons. It seemed they had followed the sounds of his battle and had arrived in response. He then looked at the two-fin fire elemental cores and wondered what powers they might bestow upon him. Absorbing them, he evolved into a two-fin demon and felt the intense heat of the flames surging within him. Realizing there was no end to the no-fin demons, he recalled how to harness the fire and unleashed a massive fire explosion to defeat them. He declared that their cries would serve as a tribute to the warriors who had fallen in the tunnels. As he continued to fight, he eventually reached an exit and wondered if the demons had come from there. Looking around, he saw the area was devastated, with many dead warriors lying on the ground. He reflected that the B-level city had been utterly destroyed, indicating a high-level demonic horde. The evidence suggested that the wood-type demons were slain with a single strike, and that the attack had a large area of effect. The power used was likely from a three-fin demon who had slaughtered the civilians. Yaot had mentioned that there were two three-fin core warriors in the city. Then he saw the two demons hanging from the roots. Aang used his own roots to bring the demons down, acknowledging that they were incredible warriors. He closed their eyes, assuring them that they could finally rest in peace. He felt the brutality of the battle deeply. A young boy, observing Aang, referred to him as a demon and questioned if he planned to kill everyone. The boy surmised that Aang must be a high-level demon, given his ability to take on a human form. He expressed that the warriors had saved his life, and that he couldn't stand by while demons desecrated their bodies. Aang felt remorse for his appearance and doubted the boy would believe his true intentions. As he pondered what to do next, a demon suddenly attacked the boy. Without hesitation, Aang rushed to eliminate the threat, realizing that no fin demons were still present in the city. He instructed the boy not to move and promised to heal him. The boy asked if Aang was a demon or a human. Aang wondered about his own nature but decided that regardless of his form, his mission remained unchanged: to exterminate all demons. He then charged forward to confront the remaining threats. He struck at the demons, explaining that if he concentrated the flames on his back, he could increase his speed and spread the fire like phosphorus powder to create explosions. He lamented that he couldn't fly. As he continued attacking the demons, He wondered what would happen if he injected the flames directly into their bodies. By throwing a demon to the ground, he caused a massive explosion and speculated that if he compressed the flames and injected them, the demons would become bomb-like. He noted that elemental abilities had many potential uses and resolved to think about it further. Just then, he noticed the demons were fleeing. He used his fire magic to pursue and eliminate them all. Afterward, he recalled Act, Lu, and others who were eagerly awaiting his visit, and remembered that Yaot was supposed to bring back an energy crystal. Ang had no idea if they were all safe. The town's own energy crystal could only last for 3 more months, but the road to Peta City was blocked. The town would be in great danger if they didn't obtain a new energy crystal soon. He needed to reach the city's crystal storage and retrieve the energy crystal. Uncertain of where to go, he had to carefully consider the resources at his disposal. Utilizing his wood-type abilities, he reasoned that the energy crystal, being a condensed form of cores, must emit energy. He could scan the entire city for fluctuations in energy to locate it. He spread his roots throughout the city to search for the crystal. Eventually, he detected it and, upon running toward the source, realized it was located underground. He sensed weak energy fluctuations, suggesting it was well protected. He found an entry point and descended, discovering that the underground area was more complex than it appeared. Upon reaching the chamber, he saw a machine and realized it must be part of the energy distribution network for a B-level city, which was quite impressive. The energy crystal, he assumed, would be even more remarkable. Just then, he heard an automatic broadcast urging all warriors to protect the crystal with their lives. Aang considered heading to the storage area and wondered how many warriors were stationed there. Aang used his powers to investigate and discovered some dead warriors. The demons had also damaged the crystals. He surmised that the fallen warriors had likely fought to protect the crystals until their last breath. The demons had carried out a targeted attack, clearly intent on destroying the crystals, and they seemed more intelligent than before. It was as if they had been directed by someone with a strategy. Realizing that he needed to find equipment and other items above ground to aid in his search, Aang knew he had to retrieve an energy crystal. If Yaot and the others were in trouble, Helos would be in grave danger. He had to locate another city within 3 months and successfully bring back an energy crystal to Helos. He entered the battle preparation room, took a monster truck, and set out to find a new city. As he drove, he noted that the areas outside the city had yet to be explored. The fog was thickening, and the ruined buildings in his path were remnants of a once flourishing life, now possibly serving as resting spots for demons. He checked the map, following the direction to the next city. A person was watching him from hiding, then cut the rope to make logs fall on Aang. He dodged the falling logs with precise timing. Exiting the truck, Aang wondered about the attack, speculating whether it was the work of demons. However, it wasn't. A girl with a gun pointed at him ordered him not to move. She demanded to know who he was, which hunting group he belonged to, and insisted that he identify himself. Aang thought it was unfortunate timing that a hunting group had shown up. Aang thought about how troublesome the situation was and hadn't expected to run into any hunting groups. He explained that he wasn't part of any hunting group and was just a normal warrior passing through. The girl accused him of lying, asserting that city warriors didn't want him there alone and that he must be a scout for the Silver Wolf hunting group. Aang was taken aback and reiterated that he didn't belong to any hunting group, and it was too sudden for him to explain further. The girl shot a bottle near him, ordering him to stay quiet and labeling people like him as worse than demons. She then asked if her comrades from the Wearing Gun hunting group were still alive. Hearing this, Aang suspected that the Wearing Gun members had been captured by the Silver Wolf hunting group. He admitted that he had no way to prove he was a warrior, or that he wasn't part of any hunting group, especially with her gun pointed at him. As Aang noticed more people arriving, the girl again aimed her gun at him, telling him not to move. Suddenly, a bullet struck her, causing her to fall. Aang saw a group of boys on bikes and realized that someone had killed the girl who was carrying the gun. It seemed there were still some survivors from the searing guns. Another man suggested they could take the survivors to their boss, prompting them to move on and check it out. As they approached the girl, she thought that the newcomers were from the Silver Wolf group and struggled to lift her hand. One of the men grabbed her by the head and remarked on her being a woman, which he found astonishing. He looked her over and commented that she was cute, considering doing something with her. Aang then arrived and kicked the man away. He expressed his disapproval of getting involved in the personal matters between hunting groups, but noted that the Silver Wolf members were scum. Given his bad mood from the day's events, he was offering them a chance to leave. The man, frightened, referred to Aang as a demon. Aang grabbed the man's gun and crushed it, stating that he found it unpleasant to be threatened with a gun twice. The man offered to let Aang go in return. Aang responded by using his roots to strike the man, sending him flying some distance away. He then demanded to know if Aang was a demon or a human. Aang crushed the man's gun further, insisting it was none of his business whether Aang was a demon or a human. He then killed the man. Afterward, Aang attended to the girl's wounds, noting that the bullet had passed through some muscle and required healing. She thanked him once he had finished, commenting that it must be one of his abilities. She mentioned that she had heard the abilities of 4-fin warriors could have unimaginable effects and that he seemed incredibly strong. She then asked if he was a 5-fin core warrior. Aang felt the power of a 2-fin demon within him, and although he was exhibiting more power than a typical 2-fin core warrior, he admitted that he was indeed a 2-fin core warrior with some special abilities. Impressed, she thanked him for saving her and apologized for threatening him with the gun. Aang replied that it was fine, noting that it was good to be cautious when alone outside. He needed to get to the nearest settlement and asked if she knew which one was closest. She said she knew and requested to accompany him. Aang pointed out that they had just met and didn't know each other's names, questioning how she could trust him so readily. He asked what work she had to do there. She explained that the closest settlement was Jinwei Town, a very small sea-level settlement, but it had been overtaken by the notorious Silver Wolf hunting group. A few days ago, the Searing Guns hunting group had tried to liberate the town, but they failed, and all of her comrades were killed. They had a chance of victory, but they didn't anticipate that the captain of the Silver Wolf hunting group had already become a 3-fin core warrior, whose power was overwhelming. Her captain was a 2-fin core warrior, and they were no match for a 3-fin warrior. In the end, she managed to escape. If liberating the town wouldn't hinder his mission, she wanted his help and was willing to put her life on the line to assist him. He thought that, although there had been hunting groups in his past life, he had never encountered a situation like this under his supervision. He wondered what the current person in charge was doing while these groups were daring to forcefully take over towns. The girl mentioned that she had heard the Silver Wolf hunting group had taken over a tower to acquire energy crystals, but she didn't know what they planned to do with them. Aang mentioned that it was indeed an energy crystal and remarked on their audacity to pillage the town's resources. He then asked her to lead the way, saying that, regardless of which issue they needed to address first, both matters made him furious. As evening approached during their travel, she informed him that they were very close now. They continued onward, and he suggested stopping to hide the car before getting too close to the town. Aang noted that this was a town he had no recollection of, one that wasn't even on the map, and that Jinwei Town had been captured by the Silver Wolf hunting group. He decided they would walk the rest of the way and investigate. Just as they were about to move, she noticed demons lurking behind them. The roots sprang up to grab the demons, and Aang remarked that vermin should learn to cooperate and avoid alerting others to their presence. They couldn't kill all the demons yet, as the blood of a freshly killed demon would only attract more. He urged her to keep moving. She agreed, and they proceeded toward the town. She thought about how strong Aang was and felt that they had a chance to save the town and his comrades. Hiding behind some bushes, Aang observed that there were no guards on the wall, and she added that the gate was open as well. They saw someone emerging from the town, carrying another person and asking for help. Another man grabbed the person's head and slammed it to the ground. The girl, enraged by the actions of the Silver Wolf members, aimed her gun at him. Aang stopped her, saying that her actions would reveal their position, and he would handle the situation. They then saw a giant hand appear, picking up the 2 men, who were now dead, and taking them inside. The girl informed Aang that there was a demon within the town. Aang realized they couldn't use the same strategy if a demon was involved. They would need to charge in and rescue as many people as possible. He swiftly dealt with the 2 Silver Wolf members at the gate and entered the town. The girl rushed after him, insisting that she wanted to join him, as it was her request. She then saw the 2 Silver Wolf members and wondered what Aang had done to them, as their skin appeared to be rotting and they looked like they had been dead for days. The town was teeming with Silver Wolf members, and Aang was methodically taking them down. She concluded that they were merely corpses controlled by a demon's special ability, meaning he didn't need to hold back. Aang exterminated all of them, thinking that they must be controlled by black strings. Such demons with special abilities usually operate alone, and he realized he would have to follow these strings to track down and deal with the controlling demon. He told the girl that he was going to save the father and son they had seen at the gate and asked her to look for other survivors. She agreed, and Aang followed the thread until he arrived in front of a gate. He struck the gate to open it, feeling as though he was too slow. Inside, a demon sat on a throne and declared that everything in the town, whether dead or alive, belonged to him. He had kept the pair alive to play a game of cat and mouse, but they had managed to escape the town and cross the line. He invited Aang to come closer, so the demon could get a good look at their guest. Aang noticed the energy crystals behind the demon, 3 in total. The Silver Wolf hunting group had originally taken over the town for these crystals. which had attracted the demon. He wondered what a demon would want with energy crystals. As the demon turned to face Aang, it questioned whether he was human or demon. Aang recognized that the demon was a rare purple core type, known for possessing unique physical abilities. Aang told the demon that he must have killed all the Silver Wolf members, noting that their leader was a 3-fin core warrior and likely no match for the demon's corpse control ability. The demon then kicked someone toward Aang, who recognized the man as the 3-fin core warrior. Aang blocked the attack, realizing the significance of his opponent. Suddenly, a large number of ghouls appeared to welcome Aang. He thought that not only the Silver Wolf members, but also the original warriors of the town had been turned into ghouls, and there were many of them. The demon welcomed Aang to his party. Aang thought of the 3-fin demon while he was in his 2-fin transformation. It would have been troublesome if it had been a normal 3-fin demon, but this one happened to be a purple core demon, weak in combat and specializing in using its psychic powers to control the flow of battle. He attacked them all, and, as he defeated them, the demon remarked that no matter how Aang looked at it, he wasn't a normal human, and asked Aang to rise and fight. Aang replied that it was of no use as he had incinerated their corpses. The demon revealed that he went through great trouble to collect them. Aang responded that it might be a little disrespectful towards them, but compared to being controlled by the demon, it was a much more honorable way to go. He added that he had no more corpses for the demon to control. Then he attacked the demon, noting that it greatly decreased the demon's combat powers. Aang prepared for the final strike to the core. Just then, the demon put the child in the way as Aang was about to punch him. Aang took the hit and thought that it was a good thing he avoided a fatal blow by using the water element. The demon revealed that he specialized not only in controlling corpses, but also lacked the sharpness of the mental element. Aang pondered the metal element, realizing its depth and deciding he needed to hurry and treat his wounds. He then used recovery magic on himself. The demon remarked that the fight might be more troublesome than he initially thought, and prepared to use something he had fought hard to obtain. He instructed a man to bring an item, and acknowledged that the father and son duo had proven themselves useful. The man then brought a green liquid, which the demon drank. Aang wondered what it was, and, sensing its danger by instinct, realized he had no time to recover. He charged at the demon despite the pain in his abdomen, aiming to interrupt the demon's actions. He leaped to attack, but a shield protected the demon, causing Aang to be thrown back. He questioned where the demon had gained such a burst of power, deducing that it was forcefully extracting energy from a crystal. Aang knew that such a process was impossible. The violent energy within the crystal had been condensed by humans to such an extent that extracting it in this way would cause the crystal's body to explode, a theory he had already proven in his past life. The power within the demon's body was wild and uncontrollable, but it stopped just before reaching the threshold. Aang wondered if this was due to the drug and concluded that it was definitely not something created by a demon. The demon then began to evolve, shining as it used the power of the crystal to transform. It became a 4-fin demon. Aang realized this was not going to end well. The demon informed Aang that this was how a 4-fin demon felt and then prepared to attack, using the Golden Gale thrust. Aang recognized that the demon now possessed the abilities of a 4-fin demon. As he tried to evade, the demon moved so quickly that it kicked him down. The demon taunted Aang, explaining that each fin gained through evolution represented an insurmountable power gap between them, declaring that this was the end of the road for Aang. Despite growing fond of him, the demon offered Aang a choice, to become his corpse. Just as the demon was about to attack, it stopped and summoned purple circles. A lady emerged from these circles, grabbing the demon's head and instructing it not to interfere with her plan. She asked if he could be the Black King and then compressed the demon to absorb it. Neo then transformed into a 4-fin demon as well and told Aang that, after all, humans couldn't be trusted. Aang sensed the presence of an 8-fin demon and realized that it was one of the demons he had encountered earlier. The demon taunted him, suggesting that at this rate, no one knew when the Crimson King would awaken. Aang struggled to endure even a 4-fin demon and was frustrated by the slow pace of his own evolution, compared to his status as one of the strongest humans. The demon used her power to make Aang fly and then utilized a stone to force his evolution into a 4-fin. She inserted the crystal into him, leaving Aang to wonder what the demons had done. He considered whether skipping the 3-fin stage might have been possible. Aang began to feel excruciating pain, realizing he was on the brink of explosion. His body couldn't handle the burden of the 4-fin core. The demon questioned whether he was truly so weak that he couldn't even absorb the energy of a mere 4-fin demon. Lights began to emanate from Aang as he struggled, telling the demon he was about to burst and asking for assistance. The demon activated the 8-panel space lock, enclosing the area around him, and instructed him to hold on. The demon inside Aang spoke, revealing that she had disturbed Boss's slumber. The girl demon recognized the voice and was familiar with it. Aang's demon then asked her if she had forgotten what he had told her. He shattered the crystal and took on the form of Crimson, instructing her not to interfere with Aang's evolution. Realizing it was Crimson, she embraced him, saying that she was glad he had finally arrived. He responded that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. She mentioned that she had been observing humans from the shadows, and noted that he had been unable to overcome the newly evolved four-fin demon. She expressed concern that if he were to die, Crimson's and her combined strength would be weakened, and require extensive training. Crimson explained that a human's body was different from a demon's. Humans were weak, but full of mysteries. Although he had only recently absorbed the power of a two-fin demon, she had forced him to skip the three-fin stage and was injecting the four-fin core into him, which his body could not handle. Despite this, the energy from the four-fin demon allowed him to awaken temporarily. He ordered her not to interfere with the human's evolution, as Aang needed to evolve slowly to become the perfect vessel. He asked if she understood. She agreed, and informed Crimson that, during his absence, he had faked his death while the other four kings had been foolishly bickering among themselves. No one had taken the initiative, resulting in a power equilibrium as Crimson had predicted. Crimson noted that the other kings, paranoid about his strength, had united to eliminate him. Now, even without him, they continued their infighting and might have already forgotten their original mandate. He asked if she had attracted their suspicions and remarked that he thought she had forgotten about him. She replied that even if they became suspicious of her, they lacked the energy to investigate what had really happened that day. Therefore she was safe, and he needn't worry about her. Her only concern was to welcome him in his strongest form. Crimson assured her that it was merely a matter of time. He had forcefully evolved his frail body into the four-fin form, but Aang needed to adjust to and stabilize the power he now possessed. He advised that it would be best if she had no contact with Aang, as any unwanted attention could jeopardize their plans. The lady confessed that she missed him, and that's why she wanted to see him, even if it was just through his vessel. The girl who had been with Aang arrived, noticing the presence of the eight-fin demon and wondering what it was doing there. The demon realized that she had forgotten to clear the area first. Crimson then attacked the girl, intending to kill her, and taunted Aang by revealing that he was a demon. Once Aang returned to his normal state, he saw that the girl had been killed by Crimson. Consumed by rage, Aang unleashed a red beam into the sky and underwent the four-fin transformation. Aang reflected on his conversation with the girl, who had expressed her dream of going to Dawn City to become an apprentice florist because she loved flowers. He burned parts of the town, including the form that had killed her, and thought about how cruel and cold the apocalyptic world was. He believed it needed more beautiful flowers to restore some of its lost warmth. Aang struggled to forgive himself for the incident, feeling that it occurred because he couldn't control the demonic power within him. He hoped the fire would protect her body from the ravages of demons, and wished her to rest in peace. He thought he didn't want to rely on his four-fin powers and needed to sort out his thoughts, as there were many things happening at once. He was confused about the relationship between the eight-fin demon and Crimson, particularly why she had forced him to skip the three-fin stage and advance directly to the four-fin stage. He wondered about their ultimate goal and the suspicious circumstances that allowed a three-fin to break through to a four-fin. This was not something a demon could achieve alone, so he speculated about who might have supplied or acquired this power. Such advanced engineering could only be managed by a major city or the highest level of organization, and Aang wondered if it had been developed in Dawn City. He realized he needed to find a large city quickly. He decided to contact Yahello and let Yao know that he was safe. He also wondered how everyone else was doing. He started driving the monster truck, hoping that they had managed to escape the tunnels and reach a city safely. There was an A-level city called Pictia in the direction he was heading, so he planned to send a message to Yahello from there. The scene shifts to the A-level city Brian, where Yao and the other three had arrived safely and were meeting with the five-fin warrior and battle commander Kota. Upon hearing their reports, Kota apologized for being unable to send a rescue team. He explained that they had just received the news that the B-level Peta city had fallen to a high-level demonic horde. He noted that if Aang were in a similar situation, sending out a rescue mission on short notice would be irresponsible. Yao countered that Aang had special talents and that it was possible he had survived despite the odds. Kota stated that while Brian City had many young warriors with special talents, none would be able to survive a demonic horde of such a high level. Nevertheless, he emphasized that they should not abandon any human lives in the apocalypse. Although they couldn't send a rescue team, they could at least divert some warriors to scout the situation. Yao thanked him for that. Kota then rose, indicating that he was needed elsewhere, and the meeting was dismissed. Yao wondered if the high-level demonic horde at Peta City would impact the Grand Demon Hunt tournament in Dawn City. Yao mentioned that he had heard about the tournament and noted that Hellos was a sea-level settlement. Kota, as he was leaving, assured Yao that it would be fine and invited him to stay a few more days to learn more about the situation. He explained that the tournament, held by the only S-level city, required participating cities to be at least B-level. Although Hellos did not currently qualify, Yao and his companions might. Kota suggested that it would be beneficial for them to learn about the tournament and, in the meantime, offered them the opportunity to explore the office and the city. They all bowed, and Yao thanked them, expressing their sincere gratitude. After Kota left, Misa asked Yao about the Grand Demon Hunt tournament. Yao explained that it was an event held exclusively in Dawn City. Generally speaking, it involved hunting demons of varying levels to select a new generation of powerful warriors. Participants also received special prizes from Dawn City. The event occurred periodically, and all warriors aspired to compete. But only B-level cities or higher could participate. Yao believed that the three of them might have an opportunity to compete in the future. Lance wondered how Aang was doing, and noted that Aang would definitely be interested in the Grand Demon Hunt tournament. With Peta City having suffered a high-level demonic horde, he hoped Aang had survived and was waiting for the horde to recede. Misa remarked that she hadn't expected such a challenge on their first sortie. Liu mentioned that Aang had put himself in danger to save them all. Yao responded that they could only wait for reports from the scouts. Yao had already sent word to Helos about their situation using the city's communication tower. They would remain in Bryan City for a few days, and since it was a rare opportunity, they planned to see and learn as much as they could. There were many skilled warriors there, and they had to believe that Aang would survive. The scene shifts to a level city Pictia, in the reception room where Aang was sitting with Barris. Barris informed him that they had confirmed Aang's report. Peta City had been destroyed by a demonic horde. They had also helped Aang send word to Helos Town, informing them of his squad's situation. She believed that a response would come shortly. However, Barris apologized for not being able to supply Aang with an energy crystal. They was not responsible for distributing energy crystals. Their allocation was determined by higher-level cities. Since Peta City, the higher-level city associated with Aang, had been wiped out, he would need to request a new allocation from Dawn City. Aang thought that he hadn't anticipated how troublesome the distribution of energy crystals would be. Since he was already in the area, he might as well check the city and investigate further into the items used by the demon. However, his current identity might hinder his entrance into the city. He thanked her and asked if it was possible for him to gain access to Dawn City on behalf of Helos. Barris declined, explaining that he needed to be a captain to serve as an official representative of Helos. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the necessary access. Moreover, she couldn't appoint anyone else as the representative. Aang considered returning to Helos to be officially appointed, which he found troublesome. She mentioned an alternative way to enter Dawn City, having a high-level city official vouch for him, someone like herself. When Aang asked if she was offering to vouch for him, she agreed, but noted that she had no obligation to do so. She explained that if he participated in the Grand Demon Hunt tournament as an external recruit, joined her squad, and acted as a vanguard to gather information during the competition, she could then vouch for him. She couldn't guarantee that he would return alive. Aang recalled what the vanguard role entailed and noted that it seemed none of her participants were willing to take on that responsibility. After considering it, he agreed to the role. He reflected that the Grand Demon Hunt tournament was something he had single-handedly established back in the day. Barris took him to the nano-equipment storage and explained that she had assigned him as the vanguard out of desperation. The current situation was that no participating city wanted to assign their important members as vanguards, given that many had died in the past few years. She had warned him beforehand that all she could do was try her best to meet his equipment needs. She then told him to choose anything he wanted from the storage. He agreed and began to look around. Barris thought that Aang's core-level display might either be damaged or that he might not have a Rin core. Given that he came from a sea-level town, he was likely at most a 2-fin core warrior. Despite this, Aang was confident and seemed to have some sort of ace up his sleeve. Aang chose a nano-wing that could transform into a greatsword. He thought that while his previous combat knife offered good mobility, its damage was insufficient. Barris asked him to wait, as she had found a piloted item meant for a 3-fin warrior at the very minimum. It would be unstable if Aang attempted to pilot it with his current strength, and he risked injuring himself in the process. He showed her the red glowing power and demonstrated how easily he could rotate the sword, remarking on its solid feel. She wondered how he managed to pilot it so effortlessly and speculated whether he had a special understanding of nano-wings. She had heard of warriors with exceptional talents who could handle high-standard nano-wings without any issues, and she found it quite shocking. Aang mentioned that they must have a live combat arena there. They both proceeded to the main entrance, where she assured him that she would do her best to provide all the necessary equipment. However, she inquired why he wanted to go to the live combat arena. He replied that he wanted to test out the new nano-wing on a demon as a warm-up. She asked if he really intended to go alone, noting that despite the arena's claims of safety, one-fin demons occasionally appeared. She offered to accompany him if he wished. Aang responded that he would be fine and could handle a one-fin demon on his own. She remarked that his confidence and bravery were rare qualities for a warrior and urged him to be careful. She mentioned that she had to train a few four-fin warriors and wished that more of them had the confidence of Aang, which would make things a lot simpler. They parted ways, and Aang thought that he couldn't let her accompany him. After all, he wasn't just going to test his new weapon. He wanted to evaluate the abilities he had acquired under his four-fin transformation. He arrived at a ruined area, noted that it had been claimed and the fog dispersed, and then heard the voice of a demon that appeared and rushed to attack him. He dodged the attack and made a powerful slash with his sword, remarking that the great sword felt much better. He noticed that many more demons had gathered and expressed his concern that they wouldn't appear during the day. Now he could properly acquaint himself with his weapon, release some pent-up frustration, and deal with various thoughts on his mind. He began to kill the demons one by one. With every swing he split demon blood and severed limbs, his movements almost like a dance. It was as if he were born solely for the purpose of slaying demons. He didn't rely on wood, water, fire, or metal elements. Instead, each swing of the sword reinforced the muscle memory in his frail body. He found himself facing no fin demons, which were no match for his skill. The only sound in the darkness was the wailing of the demons, and it was uncertain how long he had been there. Finally, Aang slashed down the last of the wave, realizing that his body had been affected by the evolving demon power within him. He noted that he was much stronger than when he first reincarnated, though he still found several areas lacking. He was surprised to find himself out of breath after just a few swings. Then, more powerful demons appeared, announcing that their food, humans, had arrived. Aang recognized that these were the one-fin demons he had anticipated. The demons sensed that Aang was not afraid of them, and wondered if his lack of fear was how he expressed it. One of the demons rushed to attack Aang, but he moved so swiftly that he struck the demon with a rock and then stabbed it with his sword. He remarked that the metal element was particularly effective against fire. He then decided to test his four-fin powers. Another demon, visibly frightened, questioned if he was truly human. Aang realized that the purple four-fin demon's power allowed him to control corpses. After consuming the demon, he used a purple thread to control it, which shocked the other demons as they witnessed Aang controlling one of their own. As evening approached, Barris noticed that Aang had not yet returned. A man informed her that sunset was imminent and, due to the demonic horde incident at Peta City, all gates, including the side gates, would soon be closed. Barris asked for a report on the levels of demons that had recently appeared. The man reported that not only had one-fin demons become more common, but two-fin, three-fin, and even four-fin demons had also been sighted. Barris worried that Aang might have become prey for the demons and needed to hurry back. She had just submitted the participant list and hoped to avoid causing any further problems. She decided to go search for him at the live combat arena and assured the man that she would return before the gates were closed. The man agreed. As she hurried, Barris reflected on her carelessness. Aang was just a normal warrior from a sea-level settlement, and she regretted letting him go to the live combat arena alone, even though it had been his request. Despite the usual presence of only no-fin demons and the rare appearance of a five-fin demon years ago, she felt responsible. If Aang had indeed died there, it would reflect poorly on her as a five-fin warrior who failed in her duty. She worried about how she would face the soldiers from Helos under such circumstances. She hoped that Aang was still alive. As she approached the arena, she sensed a strong demonic aura and a thick smell of death that did not bode well. There were a lot of demons present, including one-fin, two-fin, and three-fin demons. The unusual concentration of higher-level demons raised her concerns. Such behavior was not typical for demons, and she wondered why so many two-fin and three-fin demons were gathering in large numbers. Suddenly, she saw a demon running toward her, recognizing her as a five-fin warrior. She swiftly kicked it with force, causing a powerful blast. Something felt off, and she sensed an unusual presence. She observed that there were numerous demons congregating, which was strange since demons rarely banded together in such large groups. She knew she had to deal with this situation quickly before the gates closed. In her haste, she prepared to attack, noting that the demons seemed like mindless corpses, and emitted a strong stench of death. They only approached from the front, which made them easier to target. She decided to use her bowstring slash to eliminate the demons. After clearing a significant number, she noticed even more demons approaching and wondered just how many there were. At that moment, Aang appeared behind her, asking why she was there. In her alarmed state, she mistakenly slashed at him with her sword. Aang stopped her, identifying himself and revealing that it was him. Barris was taken aback and asked if he was all right. She was shocked that he managed to block her swing, which had been delivered with pure reflex and without holding back on speed or power. She wondered if he was really from a sea-level town, as even a 4-fin core warrior would have struggled to block such an attack. Aang replied that she wasn't a bad 5-fin warrior and admitted that his hand was numb from the impact. He explained that he had been focusing on some things and had lost track of time, apologizing for the delay. Barris reassured him that it was fine as long as he was alive, and emphasized that they needed to deal with the unusual demons. She noted that among the demons were a few 3-fin ones, which might pose a danger to Aang, and instructed him to stay behind for his safety. Aang asked if she was referring to all the demons in their vicinity. Aang just snapped, causing all the demons to fall. Barris was shocked by the sight. She asked him to leave, but she grabbed his collar, demanding to know how he did it and if he was controlling the demons. She also noticed that he was obviously a red core and inquired about his ability. He replied that their collaboration was simply a matter of convenience, and there was no need for him to disclose anything further. He explained that he could only slightly control the dead demons, and questioned whether it wasn't normal for warriors to have a secret advantage in an apocalypse. Barris wondered if controlling demons was a rare ability among the 5-fin warriors. She then said they would head to Dawn City the next day. Excited, he mentioned that he needed to quickly resolve the issue of energy crystal distribution for Helos. They planned to leave the next day. Barris wondered if she should expect more from Aang during the Grand Demon Hunt tournament, unaware of the true extent of the live combat arena, where Aang had scattered a vast number of dead demon bodies. They arrived in front of the gate of Dawn City, and Barris instructed everyone to put their best foot forward and avoid embarrassing the city. Aang, observing the scenery and topography on the way, was certain that Dawn City was indeed the city he once managed. It seemed to have been renamed Dawn City after his death, possibly because the battlefield was known as the Battle of Dawn. The exterior of the city looked even more impressive than before, and he thought it might be a long time before he would have the chance to return. He wondered if he might encounter the 6 great heroes, the strongest team he had personally trained. He was curious about how they were faring after the Battle of Dawn and whether they would believe his story if he told them his situation. Barris approached him, asking if he was intimidated by his first visit to Dawn City. She mentioned that it was too early to be shocked since they hadn't even entered the city yet. Dawn City was humanity's only S-level city, representing the very center of their strength. Not everyone is as fortunate, and some people never get the chance to see such a place. Aang thought that Barris, being a 5-fin core warrior, might have some relevant information. He then asked her if she knew what had happened to the 6 great heroes after the Battle of Dawn. She paused, finding the question odd, and asked if he was referring to the old 6 heroes. Aang was puzzled and clarified that the 6 great heroes could only mean the 6 individuals he was referring to. He explained that he was talking about the strongest team, led by the king and known as the mightiest warriors, who shared the same name as him. Barris was taken aback and asked if he was truly so ignorant. She pointed out that everyone knew the new 6 heroes disliked hearing about the old 6 heroes, and advised him not to discuss such matters inside the city. She explained that the king had changed, the dynasty had shifted, and the current mightiest warrior was the new king, while the king Aang was referring to was now known as the old king. She gave him a final warning not to speak of such things within the city. Aang wondered what had happened to the old 6 heroes. Barris shouted at him, asking if he hadn't been listening. Others stopped to look at them. Barris told Aang that while she didn't understand why he had chosen to be called Aang, perhaps due to personal admiration, she never thought to ask. She warned him once again not to speak of the old 6 heroes and the old king inside the city. Although people in a sea-level city might have admired him, that was no longer the case. Especially after the old king's sacrifice, no one believed in it anymore. She told him to remember what she had said. As they entered the city, Aang felt that no one acknowledged him, and no one believed in his sacrifice. He wondered what had happened after his death. He had led the 6 great heroes and all the warriors in a life-or-death bloodbath against the demons, and had ventured alone into the ancient King Stele to uncover the secrets of the demons. Had everything he had done been for nothing? Did his death mean nothing? He entered the city and wondered if this was the city center, noting that the city had been upgraded somewhat. He thought that it was still known as Dawn City, having surpassed the typical city in scale. The city was a vast collection of independent urban clusters and buildings with distinctive styles. It featured forests, lakes, seas, and mountains, creating an ecosystem unto itself, essentially an independent world. This enormous and impressive city was surrounded by colossal walls and divided into 7 great districts. 6 of these were dedicated to the 6 heroes, while the central district belonged to the king. Aang observed that, although many of the buildings had changed, their distribution remained the same, and even the air felt familiar. He recalled seeing his own statue there, though his face was obscured by clothing. Barris mentioned that the statue was of the old king, whom Aang had admired. It had been standing for a few decades, and the people had eagerly sculpted it while he was still alive. The old king was very popular among the people, but Barris wouldn't say more. She added that they were planning to tear the statue down soon and replace it with one of the new king. She wondered whether she should say that they were lucky or cursed. At the base of the statue, one of the old heroes was making a scene. The old hero was Lena, known as the strongest 7-fin recovery-type warrior. Aang called out Lena's name, and she was seen with flowers at the statue's base. A man approached and hit Lena, telling her not to show any respect to the old hero, especially since she was Lena, one of the old 6 heroes. The flowers fell from Lena's hands, and she, known for her temper despite being a healer, was enraged. Aang remarked that things were about to get ugly. More warriors gathered around Lena, and one of them stated that he didn't care who she used to be. He said that as one of the old 6 heroes, she had lost the privilege of having cores and was no longer a warrior. If it weren't for the decree of the new king allowing them to stay, she would have been thrown out of Dawn City to fend for herself. He blamed her damned old king and his arrogance for their current situation, asserting that the statue of the old king should have been torn down long ago. He further insulted the statue, calling it a piece of trash taking up too much space. As he spoke, Lena slapped him. The man, furious, rushed to attack her, but Aang stepped in with his sword, warning the man not to dare such actions. The other men grew angrier and drew their guns, demanding to know if Aang was looking for trouble. They warned him to put down his sword, or they would open fire. Aang questioned what difference there was between them and the worthless hunting grounds outside the city, stating that he intended to teach them a lesson. Barris intervened, stopping the confrontation. She explained that it was a misunderstanding and that these men were warriors from the A-level city of Pictia, there to participate in the Grand Demon Hunt tournament. She asked if they were seeking to confront participating warriors from different cities and urged Aang to put his sword away, reminding him that he was currently representing Pictia. Aang sheathed his sword. The warriors advised him to leave and avoid a confrontation with warriors from other cities, warning that they would be in serious trouble if the law enforcement captain found out. One of them told Aang to go quietly to his assigned accommodation if he was participating in the tournament, and remarked that Aang was lucky. With that, they left. Lena asked Aang if he knew her. He considered telling her that the mightiest warrior, Aang, had returned, but realized that this might cause more trouble if he wasn't careful with his words. Barris intervened, telling Lena that Aang had a reputation for being a troublemaker. Aang confirmed that his name was indeed that of the troublemaker. Lena began to leave, commenting that it was truly a troublesome name. Barris explained that Lena was a senior there and that Aang had just helped her, though she hadn't thanked him. Aang assured her that it was fine and that they shouldn't disturb Lena any further. He thought he would find a good time to explain things to her, and he was certain she had a lot to tell him as well. The next day, during the Grand Demon Hunt parade, Barris's team joined the festivities, and someone remarked about a new face in the crowd. Barris told Aang that after the tournament, she would vouch for him so he could get in touch with the person responsible for energy crystal distribution. Aang was pleased that she remembered and thanked her. He assured her not to worry and promised she wouldn't be disappointed by his performance. Barris hoped the same and reminded him to be careful and not die. Others were praising Aang for his actions. Aang saw Lena and handed her a slime. She adjusted the cover of her overcoat. The Dawn City featured the Forest Tournament grounds, a purpose-built forest the size of a city, specifically designed for the Grand Demon Hunt tournament. It was a city within a city, a common sight in the unparalleled settlement known as Dawn City. They stopped at a designated spot, and Barris informed Lena and the 5 warriors that, since she wasn't a participant, she could only escort them to this point. Their skills would be tested once they entered. Lena urged them to bring glory to Pictia and to proceed bravely to slay the demons. They all agreed, and Aang felt he should have shouted along with them. A broadcast announced that all squads should enter the grounds in order, with the vanguard making their way to the judges' area. Aang realized that the tournament had begun. As he entered, He marveled at how the Grand Demon Hunt tournament had evolved into such a grand spectacle over the decades. What used to be a small-scale event in this city now felt deeply nostalgic. The broadcaster welcomed the warriors of Pictia and noted that they were boldly employing external aid as their vanguard. The warriors of Pictia bowed before Aang, expressing their wish for their friendship to last forever. A girl entrusted Aang with the duty of gathering information and vowed to remember his sacrifice. A boy asked for another handshake. Aang told them to calm down, as he wasn't dead yet. He thought they were all aware of how dangerous the role of the vanguard was, and their demeanor made it seem like they believed this was his final farewell. Being chosen as the vanguard must have seemed like a role with slim chances of survival to them, and their lifeless faces were pitiful. Then a lady addressed all the vanguards from different squads, informing them that their mission was fraught with unknown dangers. She commended their dauntless courage just for taking on the role and instructed them to enter the tournament grounds, gather as much information on the demons as possible for their squad, and warned them to be cautious, as they would face demons of unknown levels. Aang noticed that all the participating warriors seemed to be Tier 2 core warriors. The tournament appeared to be a showcase of talent, designed to determine which city currently had the best new generation of warriors. Naturally, they wouldn't allow high-level warriors to participate. Barris understood that Aang's abilities far surpassed those of the Tier 2 core warriors, and this was fine, as no one would suspect his true powers if he kept them undisclosed. The lady then asked the crowd to welcome the distinguished guest with thunderous cheers. The highest-ranking judge of the tournament and one of the 6 great warriors, Dylan, the strongest recovery-type warrior. The audience cheered loudly for Dylan. Aang observed that Dylan was accompanied by a duo-core setup, something he had only theorized about in his past life. He wondered if this had already become a reality, which meant double the power. If the synchronization rate was high enough, the attainable power could be unimaginable. The strength of a warrior derives from the amount of power supplied by the core, and a high synchronization rate allowed the warrior to harness more of the core's potential. However, a high synchronization rate also meant that the human body had to endure the impact of the demonic power or risk being overwhelmed. This was why some warriors with low compatibility with cores or frail bodies had lower synchronization rates. In his past life, human technology had only been able to develop single-core grafting equipment. But now, it seemed the new 6 heroes not only had dual-core grafting equipment, but were also significantly more powerful. Except for Aang, everyone bowed to Dylan, and the horned girl thanked him for taking time out of his busy schedule. Aang felt a pang of discomfort after seeing what had become of the old 6 heroes. His presence left a bad taste in his mouth, and he couldn't help but feel uneasy about Dylan. Dylan addressed the crowd, acknowledging the bravery of the warriors despite their understanding of the risks involved. He praised their courage and, as a reward, offered each of them a Tier 3 core as a memento. He also prayed for their safe return. The warriors thanked Dylan profusely. As they continued to bow, someone told Aang to stop being rude. Aang apologized, explaining that his back hurt, which made it difficult for him to bow. Dylan then cast a smile in Aang's direction, which Aang found unsettling and wondered why Dylan was smiling at him so creepily. The girl then announced that the mighty warrior Dylan, one of the new 6 heroes, would demonstrate the hunting of a Tier 4 demon. She wished everyone the best for the Grand Demon Hunt tournament and welcomed Dylan. The audience eagerly responded, indicating that they had been waiting for him. The girl instructed all the vanguards to follow her so they could observe from the side and left the stage to Dylan. Aang wondered about the 4-fin demon hunt demonstration, and if it was a way to showcase the strength and prestige of the new 6 heroes. Capturing and containing a 4-fin demon was no easy task, and it seemed that Dawn City's power had grown considerably. Dylan asked the lady if she was a new referee. She confirmed and expressed her fortune at meeting him. Dylan approached her and remarked that they would need to replace her immediately, as they were the only 6 heroes. He found the term new 6 heroes irritating and implied that, had she not been a warrior of Dawn City, he might have accidentally caused severe harm. The audience watched with delight as Dylan lowered his head to speak to her, admiring what they perceived as his sweet nature. Dylan then asked the girl to leave. As she exited, Dylan made a microphone for broadcasting appear at his head. He requested permission to represent the 6 heroes and perform the 4-fin demon hunt. He wished everyone the best for the Grand Demon Hunt tournament and hoped that his demonstration would set a good example for the brave vanguards. A box emerged from the ground, and as it opened, the broadcaster announced that they would now switch to the tournament broadcast for commentaries. The task for the 4-fin warriors was to capture and transport the 4-fin demon, showcasing its terrifying power. As the box opened, a demon with a rare and fearsome appearance, even among 4-fin demons, emerged. It was a violent and ferocious demon of the red core metal element. The demon wondered what was happening. Although it didn't know the human's plan, it realized that they intended to contain him in the arena filled with spectators. Angered, the demon rushed to attack the audience, only to discover that he was within a protective barrier. The demon fell, and Dylan asked if there was still any confusion about the situation. He explained that the protection barrier surrounding the arena was exceptionally sturdy and had been created by one of the 6 heroes, the mightiest psychic-type warrior. The audience understood that there was an invisible barrier. Dylan then told the demon that, as for your performance, just die. The demon warned Dylan not to come any closer and launched an attack with a slash. Dylan, however, used his shield to protect himself and commented that, as expected of a demon, he was nothing more than a brutish oaf lacking in etiquette. The demon tried to break through Dylan's shield with a punch, but the shield held firm, forcing the demon to face the pressure of the counterattack. Dylan asserted that the demon had no right to resist. The demon wondered how many more green cores Dylan had, and vowed to test him with one hand. Dylan used green ropes to capture the demon, and declared that it was his duty to correct the demon's misconception. He introduced himself as a green core warrior, asserting that he was a duo 7 fin core warrior among the 6 heroes. The demon pondered the term hyperplasia, but Dylan interrupted, telling the demon to be quiet. He then struck the demon, causing it to burst. As the demon's blood spilled, Dylan took a position behind his shield and declared that this would mark the beginning of the Grand Demon Hunt tournament, calling for it to commence. Aang was struck by Dylan's strength and the extent of his power. He realized that dual cores didn't simply double a single core's power. Their complementary reinforcement allowed for even greater exertion of force. The 6 new heroes were more impressive than they initially appeared, and Aang wondered just how powerful the new king would be. Despite his admiration, he was still upset by the way they treated Lena. The broadcaster thanked Dylan and invited the vanguards back onto the stage. It seemed Dylan was well loved, as the vanguards bowed in respect. As Aang passed by Dylan, Dylan asked if Aang didn't like him. Aang responded that there might have been a misunderstanding. He explained that he had a habit of expressing hostility before taking the stage to increase his focus, acknowledging that being a vanguard was not easy. Dylan decided to observe Aang closely, finding him intriguing, and asked him not to disappoint him. Aang, reflecting on this, thought that Dylan's parents were probably still playing in the mud while he was dealing with demons. The broadcaster instructed the vanguards to assemble and listen carefully to the rules. The first task was to enter the fray and scout the woods. Their primary objective was to chart a course based on their squad's strength and find the best route through the terrain. Each squad would then be required to defeat the demons within the allocated time to earn points. The tournament featured more than just no-fin demons. There would be 1 fin, 2 fin, and even 3 fin demons scattered throughout the woods. The tournament ground was vast, requiring the vanguards to carefully scout the best routes. The broadcaster emphasized that this was not their home territory and urged the vanguards to be extremely cautious. They were to operate solo to avoid attracting the attention of any demons. One vanguard wondered if the reminder was really necessary and questioned who would risk their life just to provoke a demon. Another agreed, noting that even though no fin and 1 fin demons weren't particularly formidable, there was still a risk involved. The third vanguard mentioned that the fighting might attract other demons. The fourth vanguard reminded everyone to take care of themselves and not forget that the survival chances for vanguards in this tournament were below 36%. Aang reflected that while their 2 fin core warriors had such low survival chances, they were not exceptionally strong. He considered the synchronization rates and the importance of self-confidence. The warriors, though young and lacking the responsibilities of a captain, displayed immaturity compared to the 1 fin warriors like those in Yao's group. The warriors from Helos, a town with scarce resources, had honed their techniques and experience through life or death battles to defend their home. Some of them were already starting to panic. The broadcaster then announced that, as with every iteration of the tournament, there was a special segment involving a level 4 demon. Within the tournament grounds, there was a 4 fin demon locked within a container. If a squad was strong enough, they might consider targeting it. If they successfully hunted the 4 fin demon, the tournament would end, and their squad would be declared the winner. Aang noted that this part of the tournament remained unchanged from previous years. A man remarked that while everyone knew the 4 fin demon represented the maximum number of points possible, no one dared to take the risk. As the tournament began, all the other vanguards departed except for Aang, who then rushed off in search of the 4 fin demon. As Aang rushed inside, he observed that most of the vanguards were grouping together. It seemed that other teams had no intention of seeking out the 4 fin demon. Even though they knew that defeating the 4 fin demon would mean victory, the young warriors remained fearful of the risks. Dylan, monitoring the vanguards, asked a lady to provide information on Aang. She agreed and inquired about which warrior he wanted to know about. Dylan described the warrior with the patch of white hair who currently appeared to be taking a leisurely stroll. The lady found the information and informed Dylan that the warrior was registered at Pictia as a 3-fin core warrior. Dylan noted that he knew the tournament allowed warriors up to 3 fin to participate, but very few 3-fin core warriors actually took part due to the high risks and low rewards. This meant that the warrior was at least 1 level higher than the other participants, which might explain his arrogance. Dylan then asked for the warrior's name. Hesitating, the girl revealed that it was Aang. Dylan's anger flared, and he demanded to know what she had said. She explained that she was simply reading the name as it was listed in the report. The lady also showed Dylan the report, and he remarked that it was a cursed name. Meanwhile, as the vanguards ventured into the forest, some of them encountered demons. The broadcaster announced that the vanguards had spotted some demons and were marking their locations. This would become the gathering spot for the no-fin demons. He then observed the vanguards heading to their next location in a rush. Aang, walking calmly, reflected that marking down locations, planning routes, and optimizing the best way forward were all part of a vanguard's responsibilities. As he pushed through the initial fear, he wondered how he could ever miss such a feeling. Aang's teammates watched him, and one remarked that Aang seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll. Another boy questioned whether they really relied on Aang. Barris mentioned that she had seen Aang and recalled their conversation, where Aang had told her that he trusted her. She realized that, unlike the other vanguards, Aang didn't adhere strictly to the rules. Despite this, he had promised that Pictia would win. She thought that Aang's promise of victory, coupled with the confidence in his eyes, indicated he was serious. His display of power during the combat training had shown that he was becoming braver and even had the audacity to address her directly. The lady commented that Aang's demeanor had only increased her interest in him. Meanwhile, the vanguards continued scouting ahead. They were being pursued by demons, and one boy, terrified by the sight of 3 1-fin demons, tried to stay away from them, fearing it would decrease their chances of earning points. The boy soon encountered a 2-fin red core demon and also spotted the 3-fin demon. As some of the vanguards fled, one of them saw Aang standing still and warned him to run because of the 3-fin demons. Aang noted that this was conveniently along the route he needed to take. Suddenly, roots began to strike at some of the vanguards. The audience was shocked by the appearance of the demon and urged the warriors to escape. The demon declared that humans had trapped demons there for so long, and they deserved to die. As the demon attacked Aang, he realized that the demons within the tournament grounds were far more violent than those outside. Aang dodged the attack and thought that having so many spectators was inconvenient. He resolved to eliminate the threat as quickly as possible. Aang approached the 3-fin demon closely, focusing on its core. He realized that the 4-fin demon was still waiting, and he didn't have time to waste on this 3-fin demon. With determined precision, he attacked the core with great force. The audience was stunned as they watched him single-handedly defeat the 3-fin demon. Aang, wielding a metal element sword, infused it with the metal element to enhance its sharpness and damage. After defeating the demon, he retrieved the 3-fin agility core. He then began to search for the 4-fin demon, considering whether the layout of the terrain had changed. The highest status spectators were positioned to have the best view of the entire tournament, so the 4-fin demon would likely be placed at the most elevated and prominent part of the terrain. As Dylan observed Aang's movements, he realized that Aang was clearly searching for the 4-fin demon. Aang made a decisive strike, stabbing his sword into the demon. This was the 5th demon he had taken down. He thought that these demons had somehow grown stronger the deeper he ventured, which struck him as odd. Though he wanted to investigate further, he had no choice but to keep fighting since the demons were relentlessly pursuing him. It was no wonder no one wanted to be a vanguard. It was essentially a suicide mission for lower-level warriors. Despite this, Aang had already defeated 5 2-fin demons for his team, which should have significantly improved their squad's score. He hoped they weren't too shocked by the improvement. The 4-fin demon should be located on the hill with the highest elevation, and just beyond that, at the highest viewing pavilion, was Dylan. Dylan had noted that Aang was quite ambitious and questioned whether the squad's objective to target the 4-fin demon was a decision made by Aang or the squad as a whole. The broadcaster then announced that Aang was heading toward the 4-fin demon, which seemed strange, as it was unclear how he knew its exact location. One of his squad members wondered if Aang was planning a route for them to defeat the 4-fin demon. The broadcaster noted that their squad wasn't strong enough to take down a 4-fin demon and asked if it was Barris's decision. Barris denied this, admitting she had no idea what Aang was up to. She hoped he wouldn't cause trouble and was certain that their squad wasn't capable of defeating a 4-fin demon. The broadcaster then reported that Aang had found the four-fin demon and was observing his surroundings and making a plan. The speculation arose that Aang might be plotting an escape route. His squad would be the first to start the assault, allowing him to safely make his way back. To everyone's shock, Aang approached the container where the four-fin demon was held and opened the door. Dylan remarked that it was intriguing that Aang was not planning to let his squad take down the four-fin demon. Instead, he intended to tackle it alone. Aang's goal was to win the tournament as a vanguard. The broadcaster emphasized how unbelievable it was that Aang had unlocked the container and was preparing to face the four-fin demon by himself, a feat that had never before been attempted in the tournament. The audience erupted in cheers for Pictia. The broadcaster announced that the vanguard was taking on the four-fin demon alone. His squad mates questioned Barris, wondering if Aang had lost his mind and had no chance of success. The broadcaster noted that the crowd was in a frenzy, captivated by Aang's bold move. Barris thought that even with Aang's control abilities, a four-fin demon was not to be underestimated. She knew that facing a four-fin demon required every bit of her strength, and she questioned whether Aang was truly prepared to take on such a formidable foe alone. As the blue core water element of the four-fin demon emerged, the demon broke free and saw Aang standing alone before him. The demon immediately launched an attack with an exploding drill. Aang swung his sword to create an earth wall, but the drill showed no sign of slowing down. The earth wall was as flimsy as paper to the four-fin demon, and Aang appeared to be in grave danger. The four-fin demon taunted Aang, questioning how he dared to challenge it alone and declaring that he would be torn to shreds. In response, Aang summoned a demon to attack the four-fin demon and defiantly asked, "Who said I was alone?" Dylan realized that the second demon aiding Aang was actually one of the two fin demons he had defeated earlier. The battle continued, and the four-fin demon began to sense something unusual, wondering what was happening. It soon became clear that Aang was controlling the corpses of the demons. Aang questioned if this ability was unique to demons, but regretted he wasn't in a position to explain it to the four-fin demon. Barris observed that Aang was using his special control ability. The broadcaster was astonished by what they were witnessing. The three demons aiding Aang were previously defeated. The audience was in shock. Aang ordered the controlled demons to charge at the four-fin demon. The demons scoffed at the notion that two-fin demons could challenge him and prepared to unleash his extreme water cannon. However, Dylan intervened, leaping to strike the four-fin demon and slamming him into the ground. Aang realized that Dylan had defeated the four-fin demon with the force of his landing. Dylan apologized, explaining that he had been too curious about Aang's abilities and wanted to spar with him for a while. The ability to control dead demons was entirely unprecedented, and it seemed that Aang was indeed capable of defeating the four-fin demon. Dylan decided to test Aang's strength personally. The broadcaster announced that Dylan would be taking on Aang, and the audience was thrilled to witness such a rare event. The crowd cheered for Dylan. A man asked Barris what was happening. Another explained that Dylan, one of the 6 heroes, was going to personally test Aang. Barris responded that the situation was now beyond their control. Aang wondered if Dylan had lost his mind by challenging him, and questioned the purpose of testing his strength and killing intent. Dylan commented that it wasn't bad. Aang didn't seem frightened at all, and his demeanor was unusual for a young warrior. Aang explained that he had undergone extensive training and, due to his innate special ability, his squad captain had high expectations of him from a young age. This might be why his strength surpassed that of his peers. He added that he was considered a genius. Aang thought to himself that even if he spouted some nonsense, Dylan likely wouldn't fact-check him. Dylan remarked that Aang was incredibly interesting, and that his fascination with Aang grew by the moment. He then prepared to attack Aang, challenging him to reveal his full power. Aang noted that the rocks Dylan sent flying were like bullets. Dylan was both strong and fast. If Aang hadn't been on high alert from the start, he would have been unable to dodge the attack. The situation was serious, and Aang knew he needed to be completely focused. Dylan asked if Aang had been on guard the entire time, which explained his ability to dodge Dylan's attacks. He expected even more from Aang. Aang inquired about Dylan's hostility, wondering why he was being targeted so aggressively. Dylan rushed to get behind Aang and explained that his hostility was partly due to disliking Aang's attitude. He attacked again, but Aang managed to dodge. Dylan continued to maneuver behind him, noting that Aang stank like a demon. Aang tried to avoid detection but realized he couldn't evade suspicion entirely, especially with the demonic energy within him. Despite Dylan using less than 50% of his true power, Aang felt an overwhelming pressure. It had been a long time since he felt such intensity, not even since his encounter with the 8-fin demon. Dylan revealed that the third reason for his hostility was his disdain for Aang's name. Aang surmised that Dylan's animosity was linked to the old king, who had sacrificed his life for humanity and lost many comrades in the process. Dylan declared that the playful part of their fight was over and his rage took over as he launched a fierce attack. Aang transformed into his demonic form and retaliated. The clash between them created a massive explosion, but the audience was protected by a barrier. Their battle continued, and the broadcaster reported that it was astonishing to see Aang land a hit on Dylan, who stood with a powerful aura surrounding him. The true extent of Aang's strength was still unknown. Dylan used healing magic on himself, and the broadcaster noted that, despite this, Dylan had been injured, even if only momentarily. Determined to end the fight, Dylan resolved to kill Aang and mentioned that Aang had a strong demonic scent. The broadcaster announced that Dylan was about to unleash his abilities, including high-speed spinning energy gears that would obliterate everything in their path. They hoped that Dylan would hold back slightly, and invited the audience to enjoy Dylan's performance. As Dylan charged forward with immense power, Aang felt that Dylan was determined to kill him. Aang realized that if he continued to hide his abilities, he would surely die, as Dylan was intent on making sure he did. Even though Aang was significantly weaker than Dylan, he had no choice but to reveal his full strength. Aang prepared to retaliate with his own power. Just as they were about to clash, a protective barrier suddenly appeared, blocking Dylan's attack. Dylan recognized the barrier's presence and turned to see Lena. He asked her why she was intervening. Lena replied that, although Dylan claimed to hate Aang, she had a different opinion and actually liked him. Aang saw Lena and wondered if she had used the green core to restore her body to its prime. Dylan asked her if she had forgotten that she wasn't allowed to wear her battle gear and whether she intended to defy the king's orders. Lena replied that Dylan was mistaken. She had only been forbidden from participating in any demon-killing activities, and no one had said anything about wearing battle gear. If that was all she had, did Dylan expect her to walk around unarmed? Aang realized that Lena was still the quick-witted girl she had always been. She had always been the most lively of the 6 heroes, and in his past life, he had always stayed in front of her. However, he didn't expect her to be standing in front of him now. The broadcaster announced that Lena, one of the old 6 heroes, had appeared, and spectators were witnessing an unexpected sight. This iteration of the tournament had brought many surprises. Dylan remarked that while he respected Lena as a renowned warrior, it did not mean he would go easy on her, and she should be careful with her words. Lena asked about Dylan and remarked that on such a publicized day, someone of his stature as one of the 6 heroes shouldn't be causing such a commotion. She noted that Aang was the son of her old friend and questioned whether Dylan had tested him enough or if this was not a test at all. Dylan laughed and called them a bunch of detestable beings. Dylan then activated his ability, and the broadcaster announced that he had used the Serpent Decree. A dense energy was expelled outward in a fan shape, an undodgeable area of effect ability. Dylan launched the attack at Lena, but Aang intervened with his sword to block the initial wave. The broadcaster warned that the follow-up attacks were relentless and that Aang would not be able to block them all. Lena instructed Aang to fall back, and her shield protected them. Aang found this unsatisfactory and forced himself to take the hits head-on to prevent Lena from being attacked. Given her temperament, he knew someone might end up dying. The broadcaster grew excited, noting that the battle between the 6 heroes was a rare spectacle, even rarer than the 7-fin demon. Dylan decided to become more serious in his fight against Lena. They both launched attacks at each other, and the broadcaster provided an engaging commentary, highlighting that Dylan had used his secret ability, demon-piercing full Gatling, and was clearly in earnest. Aang expressed his gratitude to Dylan for teaching him so many battle techniques. He felt that Dylan's efforts were truly valuable. Even though Dylan was busy, he still took the time to impart his battle experience to someone as young as Aang. Aang felt unworthy of such generosity. Barris wondered what was happening. Aang then asked Dylan if he was satisfied with his performance. The broadcaster noted that Aang was showing his appreciation towards Dylan. Some spectators wondered if this meant the battle between the 2 heroes was over, and mused about the potential devastation if all 6 heroes were to fight. They were simply pleased to witness Dylan's performance twice. The audience began cheering for Dylan, and the broadcaster remarked on how, despite their busy schedules, the 6 heroes still took the time to mentor the younger generation. Such dedication was expected from the great 6 heroes, and the broadcaster encouraged everyone to cheer together for these amazing figures. Dylan said it wouldn't be beneficial for him to continue the fight. Aang insisted that he was extremely grateful for Dylan's guidance and was confident he would not disappoint Dylan in the future. He vowed to do his best moving forward. Aang felt that it was fortunate Dylan couldn't attack with so many people watching. Lena stated that she was no longer in the mood to fight. Dylan acknowledged that Aang was full of surprises and had performed exceptionally well. He praised Aang for passing the test and being an impressive young warrior, urging him to continue doing his best. The broadcaster congratulated Aang for earning Dylan's recognition, describing it as an incredible achievement, and noting that they had won the grand tournament. Barris and Aang's other teammates were shocked by how easily they had won. The broadcaster announced that this iteration of the Guard Demon Hunt tournament was the fastest and most unexpected, with Aang achieving a miracle. As the event concluded, the man remarked that the unexpected strong external aid and Aang's role as the vanguard had secured their victory in the tournament. They were celebrating their victory and received the trophy for their achievement. Barris congratulated Aang, saying that he had won the tournament for them, and wondered how much reward Aang would receive when he returned. He almost forgot to mention it. Barris hugged Aang tightly and told him to do whatever he wanted with her. As she embraced him so tightly, others had to ask her to let go so Aang could breathe. After releasing him, Aang reminded her of their earlier agreement. Barris agreed and said she would vouch for him, which would allow him to speak with those responsible for the energy crystal. Aang thanked her and noted that his cape was dirty. He asked if it would be possible for her to prepare some clothes for him, as he would not be participating in the celebrations due to a prior engagement. A girl then inquired if Aang had an important date, and whether it was with a man or a woman. Aang responded that he was going to visit an old friend. He then met with Lena and asked why she wanted to see him. Lena remarked that he had indeed shown up, and noted that the person who had mentioned Aang's name only told her to meet Lena at the secret base. Lena asked how he had known it was the secret base, and if he truly was the mightiest warrior. Lena reminisced about their past when she had been with Aang at this place. She was right. It was a great spot, offering a view of almost the entire city, and she had always liked it. It was their secret base. Aang remarked that she was still acting like a child. She asked him to stop flicking her forehead, saying it would make her seem dumb, and noted that everyone wanted their own secret base. Lena told him he was an idiot, only knowing how to kill demons while being clueless about everything else. Aang responded that it was fine and admitted that the place was indeed serene. Lena then used her power to inscribe their names on a rock, declaring that from that moment on, it would be their secret base, and asked him not to tell anyone about it. As she became more emotional, Lena asked Aang if he was truly the same Aang who remembered their secret base. Just as he was about to respond, she left, wiping her eyes and apologizing for losing her composure and scaring him. She explained that he resembled someone very important to her, and admitted she had been worried about him. Aang had been too reckless during the tournament, and she would have been too late if she hadn't arrived in time. Lena asked him to think of this as her way of thanking him for his help near the statue of the mightiest warrior Aang. Aang called her by her name, and Lena asked what he had just said. He lightly tapped her forehead and teased her about still worrying over their secret base, asking if she still thought of him as a child after all these years. Lena began to cry, and Aang assured her that it was wonderful to see her alive and well. He confirmed that he was indeed the same Aang who had returned to their secret base. Lena rushed to hug him, expressing her relief that he had finally come back and asking why it had taken him so long. He then shared everything with her. Lena was astonished when he mentioned time traveling from over half a century ago and the existence of an 8 fin in the ancient King Stele, questioning if the 7 fin was not the highest. Aang acknowledged that it was hard to understand, and that he didn't fully comprehend it himself. He admitted that he didn't even fully believe it, but to put it simply, he should have died over 50 years ago. Yet, he had traveled to the present, and there was something sinister within him. Lena expressed her happiness that he was alive and welcomed him back warmly. Aang then mentioned something he didn't understand, and asked why the residents of the present-day city were so hostile toward him and the old 6 heroes. Lena explained that the hostility towards them stemmed from the past, particularly from Aang's actions. During the Battle of Dawn, Aang had led a group of warriors to the ancient King Stele. She reminded him how a significant portion of them had strongly opposed entering the Stele. The logistics and representatives of the warriors had even come to the front line to try to stop him. Despite their concerns and the prevailing opinion to maintain the status quo, Aang had not listened. He had instructed everyone to wait for his return and proceeded to lead a group of warriors into the Stele. Afterwards, news of his death inside the ancient King Stele spread. Following this news, the resolve and confidence of the warriors plummeted. The mightiest warrior was gone, and their king had abandoned them, leading to a wave of despair among humans. Following Aang's sacrifice, demons launched a massive campaign to reclaim the lost ground. Any territory humans had gained was quickly overrun by demons, and the fallen warriors were buried under mountains of their comrades. Statistics showed that 9 out of 10 warriors had perished. To many, it seemed like the outcome could have been avoided. If only Aang had heeded their warnings and not charged into the ancient King Stele, there might have been many more survivors after the Battle of Dawn. Over time, new heroes and a new king emerged, and it was inevitable that they were part of the group that had opposed Aang's decision to enter the Stele. This was why so many people harbored hatred towards him. The 6 heroes who survived were viewed as his supporters and were scorned by the populace. In the end, their status as warriors was stripped away by the new king. Aang was shocked to learn that his past decisions had led to the deaths of so many people. Lena acknowledged that it had been a long time and she had grown accustomed to it. She explained that the past was no longer important, and it didn't matter who was right or wrong. Sometimes, when she passed by his statue, she would stop and reflect on the past. The fact that he was still alive after such a peculiar turn of events felt like a miracle. Aang asked what kind of reasoning was behind their actions. He had entered the ancient King Stele with the intent of defeating the demons once and for all, aiming for a future where humans and their descendants would never have to fear another demonic invasion. Lena acknowledged his suffering but explained that he couldn't entirely blame them. The consequences of his actions were still hard for many to accept, and as their king, he naturally bore the brunt of the blame. Aang then inquired about who among the 6 heroes still remained. Lena informed him that after his sacrifice, 3 of the heroes had perished in the ensuing battle, leaving only 3 survivors. The hero with the yellow core had suffered severe wounds, voluntarily relinquished his status, and had gone into hiding in one of the towns. Lena herself was also considering leaving, despite the many memories she had of that place. The blue core phantom had opposed the new king, and as a result, his hands and feet were broken, and he had been thrown into a dungeon to await his death. Aang was enraged by how the heroes had been treated and questioned why she hadn't gathered those who were supposed to oppose the new king. Lena explained that the new king was extraordinarily powerful, being the only 3-core 7-fin warrior. She doubted that even Aang at his prime would have been able to defeat him. She pointed out that the new 6 heroes had surpassed them, and each possessed 2-core 7-fin abilities. Aang insisted that they couldn't simply stand by while Desha rotted away in the dungeon. They had to find a way to save him. He wondered how a 3-core warrior was even possible. Lena suggested there might be a way they could explore, and asked if Aang knew that demons had the ability to control elemental powers. Aang pondered the nature of elemental power. Lena explained that demons weren't just categorized into crimson, yellow, green, blue, purple, and black based on their 6 types of cores. They had also evolved into 5 different elemental powers: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. This evolution made the demons far more difficult to defeat than before. Aang realized that this meant the earth element resided within his body. He asked what this had to do with the warriors. Lena replied that the warriors had the ability to fuse with these elemental powers. Aang understood, thinking that this might be similar to his own ability to control the elements. Lena went on to explain that there was a significant difference in strength between the 4-fin and 5-fin warriors. Nowadays, even the strongest 5-fin warriors sought out valuable fusion cores. She then mentioned that others had set out towards Dracula's Boneyard Castle to acquire the power of fusion, and she trusted that he still remembered that special place. Aang thought back to the fierce battle he had fought there, leading over 1 million warriors against the demons. They had named it Dracula's Boneyard Castle. He wondered if the name Dracula's Boneyard Castle was derived from the aftermath of that battle. Lena explained that it had been many years since the Battle of Dawn, and the Boneyard Castle had countless warrior and demon corpses buried beneath it. One day, someone discovered a special type of demon, with the lowest level being a 5-fin demon. These demons were different from the usual ones. Within the hollow of their chests hovered a fusion core, a crystal that allowed warriors to fuse with elemental powers. However, not all warriors could fuse with the core. Current studies have concluded that a warrior must be at least at the 5-fin level and possess excellent physical resistance to successfully fuse with the core. Aang asked if he could wield all 5 elements if he had the fusion crystal. Lena shook her head, explaining that the fusion would only allow control of one element. The 5 elements were inherently primitive and inhibitive, and no one had succeeded in fusing with more than one element. Even the new king and the 6 heroes could only fuse with a single element. Aang was surprised to learn that those who fused with the elemental core had gained such power. Lena mentioned that she hadn't shared this information while fighting alongside Dukhan. The reason was likely that Dukhan was concerned the protective barrier might not withstand the damage, and he was worried about his public image. If Dukhan had fought at full strength from the start, Aang wouldn't have had a chance to counterattack. Although it's hard to admit, the new 6 heroes and the king were significantly more powerful than Aang and his peers. Not only did they possess 2 cores, but they also wielded elemental powers, which is why they failed to rescue Desha from the dungeon. Aang reflected on the fact that he already had 4 elements within him, which he attributed to the 8-fin demon. However, Lena was right. Even with these 4 elements, he was still far weaker than the new 6 heroes. As a warrior, he knew he couldn't rely solely on the powers of demons. To rescue Desha, he needed to become stronger. He mentioned that it seemed he would need to visit Dracula's boneyard castle. Lena responded that Aang wasn't at the 5-fin core level yet. He remarked that there was a stark difference between rising from 4-fin to 5-fin, a point he had originally made. However, in this life, he might not need to adhere to that saying anymore and could surpass those limits. He met with Barris at the market and informed her that there had been a change in plans. He would leave after negotiating for the energy crystal. Barris noted his enthusiasm and agreed to vouch for him, so she would accompany him. This way, they could finally resolve Helos Town's energy crystal problem. Aang saw Yacht and the other 3 nearby. Yacht informed them that they would head to the Warrior War Department afterward to request aid. When Aang was stopped to see them, Barris asked why he had stopped. As she called his name, Liu heard and turned around with the others. It was Aang greeting them. They all rushed to hug him and ask why he was there. They too became emotional upon seeing him. Yaot remarked that Aang was still alive and had grown stronger. Aang apologized to Yaot for making him worry. Lance noted that Aang had also grown taller. Aang replied that he hadn't noticed and guessed it might be due to the Demon Corps. Lance explained that they had originally been following the commander from Bryan City to observe the tournament. Liu had managed to gather some information about his whereabouts along the way. They had split off from Bryan's squad to investigate, but the information turned out to be incorrect. They hurried back to Dawn City, where Yayot successfully negotiated a new energy crystal distribution. Yayot mentioned that they had planned to search for Aang again afterward, but they hadn't expected him to be in Dawn City. Aang said he was glad to hear they had resolved the energy crystal issue, and mentioned that he planned to act as the representative. Barris noted that it seemed they were the last comrades of Aang, and she would leave them to their reunion in peace. Yaot apologized to her and thanked her for taking care of Aang. Barris responded that it seemed they had just arrived and wasn't aware, but Aang had been the one looking after Pictia City. Lance asked Aang to speak with Liu, who hadn't eaten properly since they split up. Misa showed Aang the photos she had taken of Liu, who always appeared gloomy, and every conversation with her seemed lifeless. Aang approached Liu and informed her that he was reporting in and apologized for causing her worry. Liu became emotional and asked him not to go off by himself again. Aang agreed and they spent some time talking and having fun together. Meanwhile, Lena watched them from a hidden vantage point, reminiscing about how she used to spend time with Aang and the other heroes in a similar manner. Liu dreamed of a devastated area where she was supporting Aang, urging him to hold on and not fall asleep. She pleaded with him to stay awake, and eventually, they managed to find an elemental crystal. A demon observed them, referring to them as low-level warriors, and noting that even with the elemental crystal, they were only delaying the inevitable. The demon then rushed at Liu, attempting to stab her with a stick, but despite the attack, she was still able to move. She told Aang that she was too weak to protect him. She woke up in her bed, thinking it was just a dream, but the experience felt incredibly real, including the sensation of being stabbed. Sweaty and unsettled, she decided to take a shower. Just then, Aang opened the door, asking what was wrong after hearing her shouting from the next room. He found her in a nightdress, and she threw a pillow at him, scolding him for not knocking before entering a girl's room. Aang explained that he had come in because he heard her shouting. Liu yelled at him to get out. After that, Aang waited outside the hotel for Liu. When she arrived, she told him it was time to go. Aang addressed her as Liu and asked if she had cleaned up. She requested to be referred to as the squad leader. He agreed and then inquired if she had rested well, noting that they had a long road ahead that day. Liu responded not to worry, though she admitted that the nightmare had left her scared. She wondered how Aang seemed so unaffected, as if nothing had happened. Aang explained that they were currently traveling through a sea-level area on their way to Dracula's boneyard castle. They could arrive by evening if they moved as quickly as possible. He mentioned that they would have to pass a test of strength before being allowed to enter the castle, otherwise they would be deemed trespassers, which was quite troublesome. Liu added that Yaot had said the castle was an important strategic point, where promising 5-fin warriors went to acquire their elemental crystals. A special city had been built around it, with several military grounds housing high-level warriors. The castle was strictly guarded not only to prevent unauthorized access, but also as a defense against the possibility of a breakout from the creatures within. Aang asked if she wasn't afraid to accompany him to Dracula's boneyard castle. Despite Yaot requesting her presence, he hadn't expected her to agree so willingly, considering that only 5-fin warriors typically dared to go there. Liu replied that Yaot was concerned Aang might act recklessly, as he was prone to do. It wasn't safe unless he had a green core recovery type warrior with him, and she just happened to be a green core. Her presence wasn't solely for Aang, she was also on a mission. Yacht had asked her to get stronger alongside Aang, and wanted her to become a two-fin warrior by the time she returned. Lu expressed her frustration at how quickly Aang had managed to level up, reaching 4-fin in a remarkably short time. She was quite upset about it. Aang reminded her that Lance and Misa had also undergone Yacht's special training, and they had shown eagerness as well. Lu noted that as a squad leader, she needed to keep an eye on Aang, especially since he had previously left the squad. Aang responded with a mischievous smile, which irritated Lu. She asked if he was thinking about that morning's incident. He denied it. The scene shifts to Dracula's boneyard castle, where many warriors were practicing. One warrior commented that they were missing a green core recovery type, and a 5-fin warrior was the minimum requirement. Another inquired if there were any agility-type warriors, as their squad was about to depart. Finally, Aang and Lu arrived at the castle. Aang mentioned that the elemental crystals were inside. The warriors at the entrance saw Aang and Lu and referred to them as 4-fin and 1-fin warriors, respectively. They wondered where they had come from and speculated that they must be desperate. One man questioned if the young couple was lost, while another said they wouldn't be allowed in since they wouldn't pass the test. Aang told Lu that it seemed they were being underestimated. A group of warriors arrived, and one of them commented that Aang had brought his girlfriend along. The taunt was clearly meant to belittle, and the speaker seemed to be a 4-fin idiot, while another was a 4-fin warrior, and one more was a 1-fin warrior. They were determined to enter the boneyard castle, but Lu, growing angry, was reassured by Aang not to worry or respond to such a low-effort taunt. Another man explained that the taunter was Hutad, the young master of the Moors family from Oiler City. The warriors hadn't anticipated that Hutad would come to the boneyard castle seeking an elemental crystal, accompanied by a 6-fin warrior. The 6-fin warrior appeared to be one of the top fighters hired by his family. One of the onlookers mentioned that he had seen the 6-fin warrior's information on the warrior's hiring board, and noted his impressive strength and affiliation with the Moors family. It was also noted that the 6-fin warrior had acquired an elemental crystal and gained significant elemental power. With such an escort, it was presumed that Hutad would secure the elemental crystal this time. Hutad introduced himself as the young master of the Moors family from Oiler, an A-level city. He was confident that everyone had heard of his family, which was the largest warrior guild in Rooker City. Addressing Lu, he ordered her to listen, stating that she did not belong in such a place. Since she was a green core, he offered her the opportunity to become his personal healer, promising to be generous if she accepted. Noticing that Aang and Lu were ignoring him and talking among themselves, Huto questioned whether they were unfamiliar with the Moors family. He felt magnanimous since Lu appeared so pretty. Lu, enraged, demanded to know who gave him permission to speak to her in such a manner. Hutod continued to boast about his family and belittled her, which only fueled his anger further. He let one of his companions fall and challenged Lu, claiming he could kill her with a single finger. Lu, though not strong enough to match him, refused to back down. She was infuriated by his arrogance and perversion, and despite her fearlessness, she was prepared to fight back. Huto rushed forward to attack Liu, declaring that he would teach her a lesson. Just as he was about to strike, Aang intervened to stop him. Huta demanded that Aang move aside, threatening to deal with him as well. Aang countered by pointing out that Hautad was the instigator of the conflict, and warned him that continuing could damage his family's public image. He suggested that Huto reconsider, as the guards might prevent him from entering if he caused a disturbance in such a place. Fuming with anger, Huto insisted that he had no need to reconsider. At that moment, the 6-fin warrior accompanying Hutad stepped in and agreed with Aang. He noted that all the warriors present were quite formidable, and causing a commotion would not reflect well on Hutad's family. He advised that there was no need to rush, emphasizing that their primary goal was to enter the Boneyard Castle. Once inside, anything could happen, so it was crucial for Huto to understand the situation and act accordingly. Hutad freed his hand and declared that he wouldn't waste his time on such insignificant opponents. He then proceeded ahead. As the 6-fin warrior followed, he used his earth elemental power to launch a barrage of small stones at Aang. However, Aang effortlessly caught all the stones in midair. Liu asked if something was wrong, and Aang replied that it was just a minor nuisance, likening it to mosquitoes. He then suggested they proceed with the test, confident they would handle it without any issues. The 6-fin warrior was taken aback by how easily Aang had blocked his hidden earth elemental attack. Despite the speed of the attack, it should have pierced through Aang's hands. The warrior called Hutad and recommended altering their list of top contenders for the elemental crystal. He noted that Aang appeared to be a major contender, with power clearly exceeding that of a 4-fin. The six-fin warrior admitted he couldn't fully gauge Aang's strength, and concluded that they should find a way to eliminate both Aang and Liu first. As Aang and Liu underwent the synchronization rate test, Aang scored 54%, while Liu achieved 42%. Liu asked if this meant they passed the synchronization test, noting that there was no minimum requirement. Aang recalled that Liu's synchronization rate had been 39% before, and she had not only become a one-fin warrior, but also rapidly improved her sync rate to 42%. This was an impressive advancement. The woman conducting the test noted that one was a 4-fin and the other a 1-fin, questioning their decision to enter the Boneyard Castle to compete for an elemental crystal, given that the demons inside were at least 3-fin in strength. Aang affirmed their decision, stating that they were capable of defending themselves, with Liu serving as their squad's medic and a highly agile warrior. Liu found it irritating that Aang referred to her primarily as a medic. The woman explained that no warrior below 5-fin had ever dared to enter the Boneyard Castle, making their attempt the lowest level entry ever recorded. She reminded them that the elemental crystal could only be found on a special elemental crystal demon, with typically only one such demon appearing at a time. It would be some time before another demon of its kind showed up after one was hunted. The woman then warned that they would not only be fighting demons, but also contend with stronger warriors, with their very lives at stake. She asked if they still wished to proceed given these risks. Aang agreed, stating that their goal was not merely to survive, and he thanked her for the reminder. She then permitted them to enter. Liu recalled the rumors that 9 out of 10 who entered the Boneyard Castle would die. She admitted to feeling afraid of this, yet she was surprisingly calm and confident. It seemed that, as long as Aang was with her, she felt a boundless courage. With that, they entered the castle. As they entered the Boneyard Castle, they took care to hide from the demons. Liu observed that the place was completely overrun by demons. Aang explained that while it was called a castle, it was actually more like a city. In the past, it was comparable in size and population to Dawn City. Located in the heart of the continent, it had once been the city with the highest population density. However, after the demon invasion, it was gradually abandoned, eventually becoming a battlefield. The historical castle in the city center and its surroundings were occupied by demons, and no one dared to live there anymore. Over time, people began referring to it simply as the castle, perhaps as a way to forget its once glorious past. Liu remarked on how knowledgeable Aang seemed. He downplayed it, saying he had merely heard about it. He then stood up, suggesting they begin their search for the special demon and its elemental crystal. He emphasized that they should try their best to avoid unnecessary fights while in good condition. Liu saw a blast and guessed that some warriors were caught in a fierce battle. She asked Aang if they should go to help. Aang advised against it, suggesting that it would be best if they avoided getting involved, at least while they were still in the Boneyard Castle. He reminded her to keep her guard up. He observed that Liu, having grown up within the confines of Helos, had a kind demeanor and seemed unaware of the dangers of the outside world. He warned her that the type of annoying warriors they encountered at the entrance were not uncommon. Most people there were greedy and scheming. As a precaution, he advised her to keep their kindness to themselves. Suddenly, Aang noticed a demon rushing toward Liu. He swiftly pulled her away to safety. The demon remarked that Aang's reaction was unexpected, noting that his water-type attacks were silent and odorless, which should not have been possible. Aang recognized the demon as a 5-fin and realized it had used its advantage of silent, flowing water and agility to get behind them unnoticed. Liu, reflecting on the situation, felt that if Aang had not reacted in time, she might have been in serious danger. Aang asked Liu why they had to finish so quickly, stressing that they should avoid attracting the attention of other demons or warriors and to end the fight decisively. Liu agreed, understanding that she couldn't afford any more mistakes and didn't want to be a burden to him. The demon questioned whether they truly believed they could defeat him, noting that he was a 4-fin and 1-fin warrior, and wondered how they dared to underestimate him. Then he vanished and leaped from above, launching a rainstorm waltz attack with spikes aimed at them. Aang recognized it as an area of effect attack and instructed Liu to move closer. He created a protective barrier for both of them, rendering the spikes ineffective. The demon assured them not to worry, claiming he would leave their bodies in peace after killing them. He observed a mixture of wood and metal and wondered if it was elemental power. He was puzzled by how Aang could wield more than 2 elements, as human warriors could only have elemental power if they were 5-fin or higher. Aang rushed to attack him, and the demon warned that he would pierce Aang. The demon used the spikes to emerge from the ground and attack Aang. Aang, utilizing the water element as well, got close to the demon and asked if he was surprised. The demon smirked, admitting it was just a joke, and acknowledged that while Aang had managed to use the water element, he he was still no match for the demon's agility and water-type combo. Aang then signaled Liu, who was positioned behind the demon. Liu kicked the demon while Aang drove his sword into it, and together they finally defeated him. Aang expressed his appreciation for the teamwork, and they successfully obtained the water core. Liu took the core and, as a one-fin warrior, claimed the 5-fin blue core, assuring Aang that he needn't worry and that she would leave the demon's body in peace as well.